What does it mean for a game to be one of your favorites of all time? For many, that may seem like a simple question, but to be honest, I find it's often pretty hard to answer definitively, all because of how many different reasons one can have for liking whatever game over whichever other one. I mean, picking which games you prefer over others can already be tricky enough to decide on, let alone explain your reasoning for, but choosing favorites? Don't even get me started. Me personally, I'm one of those people who sometimes has trouble describing why I feel the way I do about some games, or more specifically, the reason I prefer certain ones over others. A lot of times what it boils down to is the experience, how a game's elements come together and maneuver as one. Even in some cases where I can admit another game in the series is probably better than the one I personally like more, that's usually what it comes down to. It may not be convincing for some people, that's fine, but it's just how my thought process works. Hey, I don't consider myself a serious critic or whatever, I'm just a guy who likes to talk about stuff I find cool or interesting, even if a lot of the time my feelings towards some games may be unconvincing or even unpopular. However, with all that laid out, there are those cases where my choice for a favorite game is pretty clear, and above all else, I have absolutely no trouble explaining why. It's those cases where I think a game is just so well crafted that it sort of speaks for itself, and yet I still feel the need to describe what I love about it because of how good an experience it is for me. In my opinion, no other game embodies this description quite like a certain ape-based platformer from the mid-1990s. I'm talking about, of course, none other than Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest. I know I say this a lot, but man, I'm sure for many this is a game that needs no introduction. Look anywhere on the internet that has some form of talk about this series, and this is a game you're bound to see get mentioned in some capacity, I guarantee it. People just really love DKC2, and while I don't know for an absolute fact if this is the case, I get the sense that this is the most well-loved game in the trilogy, if not the Donkey Kong series at large. As I said a minute ago, I have no trouble seeing why that is whatsoever, because, and I don't mean to ruin the, totally not non-existent suspense. I think DKC2 is an absolute banger video game. In fact, I would go so far as to say this game is quite possibly one of my picks for the greatest 2D platformer ever. Quite a bold claim, I'm sure. Many of you are probably thinking as much, considering how many potential contenders there are for that title. Like I said in the last video, while the Donkey Kong Country games are still talked about every now and then, I don't see them get mentioned quite as much as Mario, Sonic, Mega Man, and any number of other well-known series. Some people may wonder why, of all games, this one is considered by some to be the absolute best side-scroller, when games like Super Mario World or Sonic 3 and Knuckles exist, for instance. How can this seemingly random title, which some may have not even known existed, outclass some of the titans of the genre, which set standards for it for decades to come? Well, as I always do, let me take it back to the beginning. Immediately following the release of Donkey Kong Country in late 1994, Nintendo was soaring high. The game was a blockbuster success, flying off shelves and actually setting the record for the fastest-selling game at the time. Without a doubt, this considerably boosted the sales of the SNES itself, and many people cite the game as one of the main reasons Nintendo eventually managed to overtake Sega this generation. They had been on top for the longest time with their Blue Hedgehog and quote-unquote blast processing, but before they knew it, their rival had taken the throne back. And it was all because of a plan of monkeys. DKC1's sales success prompted Nintendo to purchase a 49% stake in Rareware, which only strengthened their desire to create a sequel. As with many other game series, Rare had already been creating plans for a sequel to Donkey Kong Country before the game had even released. But this purchase, alongside the profits that had been earned from the game, ensured this sequel would not be a matter of if, but when. DKC2 began with a concept for its setting, which would be themed around, well, I'll get into that later. Don't want to jump the gun too early, you know? The game took a similar, yet still somewhat different approach from the first one. Rare intended to refine the formula they had introduced, taking the few critiques that DKC1 had gotten to heart. Among them was the level of challenge, which they had tried to increase in a natural way, after some platforming veterans had found the first game a little too easy. A bit funny, since not many people these days would describe this series as easy, but that's how it was back then. In any case, on top of refining the formula, Rare had also planned on introducing even more exploratory elements to the game, while still keeping that focus on flow DKC1 had. All of this was, of course, on top of the same revolutionary pre-rendered visuals that had helped make the first game so famous. On the whole, they had big ambitions in mind for this one, and they really wanted to make the best sequel they possibly could. Oh yeah, and they even planned a Virtual Boy port at one point. Figured I'd mention that because, you know, the game's subtitle had surprisingly many working options, including the hilariously casual Diddy's Day Out, Diddy's Wild Country. Yeah, country being in the title twice would have been a great idea. Sincerely, a guy who occasionally uses words multiple times in one sentence in his videos sincerely, and the rather on-the-nose DK Rescue. Again, don't worry, we'll get to it. In the end, Rare decided on Diddy Kong's Quest, but this still didn't sound quite right. So with a simple move of the possessive, Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest was officially born. corn. A really clever pun if you ask me, and one that took me shockingly long to realize the existence of. Don't know what it is? You will eventually, I won't spoil it for you. In a moment of serendipity, DKC2 released exactly 1 year after the first game did, on November 21st, 1995 here in North America. It received really positive reviews from critics, achieving frequent scores above a 9 out of 10, if not a perfect score in all cases. Some outlier outlets, such as IGN gave it scores like 8.8 out of 10, but their opinion doesn't matter anyway, so who cares? In all seriousness, my point is that this game was highly celebrated, and it quickly became an icon in the SNES's library around the time of its release, with many considering it even better than the already great first game. Sure, you had those people, however many or few, that preferred the original for one reason or another, but from what I can tell, DKC2 was seen as the ideal sequel Rare had intended it to be. It, for many people, is the game that made this series legendary in its day, which makes it all the more unfortunate that I don't see as many people discuss it nowadays. Or at least, not nearly as many people as Mario or Sonic, for instance, as I said. Don't get me wrong, I love those series too, but in my opinion, DKC2 especially manages to hold its own alongside them. It's a game that always gives me a great time whenever I return to it, and that makes me pumped to talk about it for you lovely folks today. This is what made Donkey Kong Country 2 so awesome. Upon starting this game up, things are a little different from last time, which I mostly say because the game doesn't have a sprite animation intro, or whatever you want to call that, I suppose. That's a little unfortunate, but I don't think it massively detracts from the strong first impression this game makes. If anything, it could be seen as more melancholy, which I'd say fits the plotline this game has, which I'll get into in a moment. You still get a nice little rendered title screen after the Rareware logo, which I think looks leaps and bounds better than the one in DKC1, including everything from the color down to the lighting and sprite art quality. I love how we can see Diddy and his girlfriend Dixie, a new character introduced in this game, coming across all this glowing golden treasure, while some Kremlings approach them from behind, presumably to come and ask, "Oi, you got a license for that?" Alright, I'm looking way too deep into this, as I always do. Point is, it's a nice image to set the tone of the game. Upon pressing start, you get a file select screen stylized like a treasure map of sorts, with an image of DK Island right next to this other mountainous island with an X marked on top. It looks really nice and fits well with the somewhat darker title screen, appearing more rustic and aged, which I really like. Anyway, enough about this nonsense, let's get into the actual game. Much like DKC1, this is an SNES game, didn't you know? So the story is relegated to the manual in a simple pseudo cutscene you can view by entering an area in the first stage. Speaking of which, I have to mention how this game's first world takes place on the Gangplank Galleon, the same ship that King K. Rool uses as base of operations in the previous game. So this game pretty much starts off right where DKC1 ended, in a sense. I love when games have care and attention to detail put into them like this. For me, it shows the developers cared about what they were making. And trust me, this is only the beginning for this game in that regard. Anywho, if you enter the captain's quarters, accessible from this doorway on the ship, you get a quick blurb explaining what's happened. You may immediately notice that this game kind of revolves around Diddy. He's name dropped in its subtitle, he prominently appears on the title screen, his face is the icon for a single player save file, and most importantly, he's the character you take control of at the start of the game. Yeah, DK is seemingly nowhere in sight. Which, side note real quick. You may remember from my last video how I said, oh, I don't know who Donkey Kong's father is. And I referenced Donkey Kong Jr. in the same video. Jr. is the father. No idea how I didn't connect the dots on that before. But anyway, in a somewhat ballsy move, Rareware decided to not have him be playable. And instead the story was framed around rescuing him. Inside K. Rool's cabin is a note, and interacting with it reveals that he's, quote, captured that lumbering fool Donkey Kong. He also interestingly signs the note, Captain K. Rool, and even laughs like a pirate.
Bell plus plundered plus no wenches plus maroon plus you have scurvy.
Alright, I'm done dancing around it. If you couldn't tell by now, from Diddy and Dixie finding a treasure chest on the title screen, to the treasure map file select, and now this, that particular theme this game has, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, yeah, it's pirates. Lead designer Greg Males was fascinated with the so-called Golden Age of piracy, a period of time between the mid-17th and 18th centuries when maritime piracy was especially common. And as a result, DKC2 would be entirely themed around pirates. This includes K. Rool, naturally, who's taken on a new Blackbeard-like persona. I won't go too much into detail right now, because I think a discussion of my thoughts on this new theming best fits with what I have to say about this game's visuals, but suffice to say, it's one of my favorite things about this game. Anyway, the game itself begins very soon after DKC1. After Donkey Kong got his banana horde back from K. Rool, he, Diddy, and the rest of the Kong family have settled down. One day, while Donkey is doing nothing particularly out of the ordinary, a massive airship shows up to DK Island, piloted by Captain K. Rool and the rest of the Kremling crew, the name their collective goes by. Very fun, I must say. They capture DK and bring him to their homeland, the nearby Crocodile Isle, which is indeed the mountainous island we saw on the file select screen. Soon, the Kong family discovers that DK is missing, and through the note left by K. Rool, they discovered that he's holding DK for a ransom, demanding the Kong's banana horde in exchange for his freedom. Strangely, that little detail about the ransom isn't in the SNES version's note, and instead it was explicitly added in the GBA remake, or in the original's manual, but that's beside the point. In my opinion though, it's pretty easy to infer that K. Rool was doing something like that anyway, so yeah. Unwilling to comply with the ransom, Diddy Kong sees this as his opportunity to prove himself as a worthy hero in his own right, and teams up with his girlfriend Dixie as they travel to Crocodile Isle in search of DK, once again accompanied by the animal buddies, both recurring and new. It's a fairly standard platformer plot we've all seen many times before. Some friend or acquaintance of the protagonist gets taken away from them by some evil force, and now we have to rescue them. That being said, I find it so entertaining and endearing because of the sheer charm and fun that permeates through every aspect of the presentation and dialogue. And on top of that, the story's simple concept is elevated by the strong thematic consistency the game has present throughout. The members of the Kong family, save for Candy Kong, return in this game, and I'd say they're even stronger as characters this time around. Funky's Flights 2, which is what Funky's Flights is now referred to as, is even more thematically appropriate to his surfer dude persona, what with how the place is set in a floating surf shop in the sky. In the GBA version, it gets even more clear the place is on a huge surfboard, and both feature an air traffic control tower, making it into a surfer airport of sorts, which I just find really funny. Hell, Funky even stands on a presumably magical floating surfboard now, a nice little detail that further enhances his character. I feel much the same way about Cranky Kong, who remains my overall favorite member of the extended Kong cast. In this game, he resides in a place known as the Monkey Museum, and once again offers hints that point you towards secrets and whatnot. He also keeps track of your progress with a certain collectible I'll get into later, so there's a dual purpose here. In general, Cranky Kong is still the same, well, cranky old man he was in the first game, and once again complains about how kids these days are too soft, how their games aren't nearly as good as the ones he had in his day. You know, things said by your average dinosaur. He says he's back by popular demand in this unnecessary sequel, and throughout the game he consistently breaks the fourth wall as usual, providing some more of that self-deprecating humor I can't help but laugh at. I'd even say this aspect of his character was drummed up even more in this game and all of its promotional material. He comes off as even more grumpy and consistently hilarious than last time. In fact, Cranky was even the one who prompted Diddy to go to Crocodile Isle in the first place. In the manual's expositional blurb, Cranky scoffs at the idea of Diddy going to rescue DK, and Diddy claps back at him with the fact that he accomplished so much in the previous game alongside his best friend. Unconvinced, Cranky challenges the young Kong to save, and I quote, that good-for-nothing DK, and demonstrate he has what it takes to be a true video game hero. If he succeeds, Cranky will admit he was wrong, but if not, then Diddy will apparently be relegated to nothing but cameo roles for the foreseeable future. Diddy vows to get DK back, and joined by his girlfriend Dixie, and encouraged by the other members of the Kong family, including the newly introduced Wrinkly and Swanky Kong, he sets out on his Kong quest. I'm not sorry for that one. For as simple as this story is, I really love how they framed it around Diddy proving himself capable. An age-old tale that's easy to relate to, I'm sure. Throughout the game, Diddy conquers some pretty tough challenges, which truly makes it feel like he's going through a coming-of-age or rite of passage or something. It's a consistent thing throughout the game from beginning to end, and as you ascend Crocodile Isle, you can just feel the tension and stakes increasing as Diddy gradually closes in on K. Rool. It turns this pretty typical kidnapping plot into something more memorable, and as a result, I find the game itself all the more captivating to play, even if the story itself is still basically a background element to the gameplay like these things usually went back then. Also, and I know this seems like a completely random digression, but I have nowhere else better to mention it, I love this game's manual. Much like DKC1, they pack it to the brim with all sorts of charm and personality, with frequent punchlines and fourth wall breaking humor I already mentioned briefly. This is especially apparent with all these speech bubbles, I don't know what else to call them, where Cranky shows up and makes some smart ass comment about what's on the page. What's going on here? She should be the damsel in distress, not one of the stars. Oh, Cranky, you simple-minded sexist f***. I also like all the little details and blurbs they give about the various locations of Crocodile Isle, the game's mechanics, you know, all that good stuff. In particular, the section about the details of the island serves as some decent world building for the Kremling HQ, going into detail about how Krem Key used to be a dock for the island that fell into disrepair and became a swamp, or the fact Crazy Kremland, the amusement park the Kremlings use for entertainment, is haunted, or how... Oh wait, shit, spoilers. Can't show that one. I appreciate all the love and care that went into this, and you can just tell from the offset that Rare was having the time of their lives with this game. Oh yeah, and the manual also reminds me. This game introduces a few new members of the Kong family alongside the returning ones, like I mentioned a second ago. To be honest though, I don't have a whole lot to say about most of them. Swanky Kong is a Bob Barker type character who hosts Swanky's Bonus Bonanza, a trivia game show where you can earn extra lives. His personality is pretty milquetoast if you ask me, essentially just being a stock game show host, but he has a few standout lines. I feel like I would have more to say if he was a swindler or scummy auctioneer of sorts, but what can you do? Wrinkly Kong, Cranky's wife, operates a school by the name of Kong College, which is pretty much the stand-in for Candy's save point. Being a teacher, Wrinkly offers some tutorials on the game's mechanics, which can be purchased for a couple banana coins, a currency introduced in this game that I forgot to mention when talking about Cranky. Oops! Oh well, I'm still doing better than whoever the hell wrote these answers on the blackboard. Seriously, you're telling me that this shit exists, and whoever this was can't even do simple addition or multiplication? No wonder the Kremlings couldn't prevent a bunch of monkeys from getting their bananas back. Regardless, Wrinkly is probably the weakest Kong family member in the game, to be honest, because like Swanky, she's a pretty standard archetype, a sweet old lady. I do find that funny due to how heavy of a contrast it is from Cranky's abrasiveness, and making Wrinkly a more standard asshole teacher trope would probably be a little too similar to him, but as is, she doesn't really jump out to me a whole lot. This is by the standard of this series though, so I'd still say these two are entertaining characters on their own. My favorite new Kong in this game has to be Diddy's girlfriend Dixie, however. It's not only because she's the other playable character, which almost automatically makes her more memorable than the rest. For one, I really like her character design, notably that huge ponytail she has, which, as you'll see, informs her abilities, and her outfit, notably the pink beret on her head. It makes her stand out and distinct, which I'd say is worthy of a compliment, considering the fact her design was evidently based on Diddy's, which could have easily resulted in her being a lazy recolor. Rareware is attentive to details though, so that's not the case, and for that I applaud them. Dixie's a charming character, and I think she was a perfect fit to fill the void left by Donkey Kong. Which reminds me, I have heard that some people are a little bummed out that DK isn't playable in this game, and would have preferred to play as him because the title of this series seems to indicate you'll be able to do so in every game. To be honest though, I don't mind his relegation to a mere plot element at all. Sure, maybe it's a little weird when you consider something like Mario, where the title character is always playable, but in my opinion, it's a welcome shakeup that prevents the series from becoming essentially the same thing in every one of its outings. In this case, I'd even say DK not being playable is one of my favorite things about the game, or rather, contributes to one of my favorite aspects, which is again Diddy's journey of self-discovery. It gives him the spotlight for a game, and allows him to stand out on his own as a worthy video game hero, like he has aspirations to be. No idea how many times I've said that by now, so I'm sure you get the point. I think the story and presentation are fantastic in this game, and they just radiate personality. It gives me the sense that Rareware was really putting their best foot forward for this game. But oh dear viewer, all that stuff I just spent several minutes discussing is only the tip of the iceberg for how awesome this game is. One thing that really jumps out to me is something I brought up in passing a minute ago, the theming, or more generally the game's visuals. You knew this was coming once again, given this is a video about a Donkey Kong Country game, and yeah, this game has the same strengths the previous game did. With that being said though, while DKC1 was already gorgeous in my opinion, I think this game looks even better, and by a substantial margin too. This game uses the same technology that its predecessor did, specifically Alias Power Animator running on a few SGI Challenge workstations, to achieve that distinct pre-rendered look for which the series is most known. If you need a refresher, they made 3D models to represent the characters and environments and then compressed them down into sprites the SNES could handle. However, this game takes things to the next level, and in many ways I can tell Rare started to master the technique. DKC2's sprites, foregrounds, backgrounds, and so on appear far more refined and detailed than the visuals of DKC1, and for me it makes the game a lot more engaging to look at. For one, this game has so much more color than the first game ever did from what I can see. Whereas DKC1 was dominated by green, brown, gray, and white, this game has those colors in addition to distinct reds, oranges, yellows, blues, basically the whole spectrum of visible light and even more. I like how certain level types focus on using certain colors, but many also mix numerous shades in a clever way to get around the SNES's VRAM limitations, leading to very captivating environments that hold my attention. For example, the Volcano and Zinger Hive levels have strong, appealing reds and oranges. The brambles feature greens contrasted with a gorgeous sky background, and the roller coaster levels are all around bursting at the seams with color, very fitting for an amusement park. On top of that, the hues they use are really vibrant, and if you know me, that's something I can more than get behind. In addition, as I said, the game's sprite work and environments have taken several steps up the staircase of impressiveness, featuring far more intricate details and refined proportions than those of DKC1's visual assets. What especially jumps out to me in this regard is the backgrounds, which I'd say have a lot more depth than this time around, being full of life and color and once again using parallax scrolling to solid effect. On occasion, they even bust out some sick-ass Mode 7 effects, specifically those pseudo 3D floors and ceilings in the ship interior and castle levels, which look almost completely convincing. In fact, if I didn't know any better, they may have been able to pass as real 3D models. Well, presumably they were on Rare's workstations, but you know what I mean. And yes, while I know this isn't in the actual game, I also think the promotional renders for this game are of notably higher quality than those of the previous one, which is to be expected from computer technology as time marches on. Much like DKC1, DKC2 has box art that's exploding with character. And if you ignore Diddy and Dixie along with the enemies preparing to ambush them in the foreground of the shot, you can see a bunch of small details, like DK being dragged away in a cage, what I assume is On Guard fighting off a bunch of lockjaws, and even this mysterious dark parrot whacking squawks with a baseball bat. The back of the box is full of similar charm, with Cranky staring at and accosting you in typical Cranky fashion. Yeah, even the box radiates that personality I've been praising so much thus far. And it even has cleaner, albeit still admittedly somewhat aged renders. But anyway, getting back into the actual in-game graphics, I also have to mention how at various points in the game's world maps, you can see DK Island in the background, which further enhances that world building I talked about. Sure, Donkey Kong Country may be a silly series that frequently includes fourth wall busting gags, taking the piss out of the video game industry, but they still didn't hold back back on creating a surprisingly interesting world for an SNES game regardless, which I have to commend them for. It's little details like this that can go a long way, in much the same way to what the first world being set on the Gangplank Galleon did. Also, this game hits a smooth 60 FPS, much like a grand majority of SNES games, which is doubly impressive here. DKC1 also managed this feat, but in the case of DKC2, the graphics appear way more advanced and detailed, so I have to give props that they still prioritize good performance as an important benchmark, the occasional frame rate dips notwithstanding. Pound for pound, this game is yet another technical achievement, and without a doubt, it gets my pick for the most gorgeous SNES game. And yes, that is saying a lot, considering how graphically advanced some of this system's best games can get at times. Hell, I'd even say that this could pass for an early sprite-based PS1 game to an impartial observer. Okay, whether you agree with me on that particular point is endlessly debatable. Bottom line is, this game is a technical marvel for the system it was released on, and I think it's one of the prettiest sprite-based games out there. But with all that laid out, my absolute favorite things about DKC2's visuals are easily its theming and little details that contribute to an inexorable degree of charm. I already brought it up, but yeah, this game is themed around pirates. For moment one, this is evident by how the menus look, K-Rool's new persona, yada yada, stuff I already pointed out when talking about the story and characters. But this is no simple, superfluous thing that's just more or less half there. No, they went all the way with it, and practically every aspect of the game's visuals ties into its swashbuckling subject matter. I was looking for some sort of alliteration there, and I'll admit that was a little forced. Just go away, leave me alone. But anyway, getting back on topic, do you remember how I levied a little bit of critique towards DKC1's setting? I like the idea of the Jungle Island theme, but in my opinion, they really didn't do too much with it, which led to that game coming off as a set of disconnected areas loosely linked together to me. As I said in that video, I don't mean to throw too much shade at DKC1's visuals, because I do like them, but I feel the game could have gone way further to make the Jungle Island theme more clear, and gotten more creative to really wring as much memorability as they could out of it. It may have seemed a bit unfair when I went on about it in that video, and perhaps it actually was, but that's only because of how strong I feel the theming is in DKC2. In essence, Diddy's Conquest provides the exact sort of thing I love to see in games when it comes to art direction. A distinct identity created by a recognizable theme. For my money, any game that does this sort of thing is instantly more memorable than those games that go for something more general, standing out in my mind far more. For instance, if you absolutely need an example, think of Mario 64 and Sunshine, or even something like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Because, even in these videos about monkeys, I can't help but reference the plumber and the hedgehog like 10 damn times or something. For both cases, I find the latter game a lot more instantly recognizable and captivating than the former. And that's all because of the theming they go for, whether it's the beach island in Sunshine or the yin-yang thing SA2's got going on. In short, this kind of thing works wonders in helping a game stick out from the crowd, in my opinion. DKC2 is easily one of the best cases of that I've personally seen, and it all comes down to, once again, the commitment they have towards the pirate motif. Not only do I agree with Greg Mills that pirates are pretty neat, although I'm more of a general history buff as a whole, not only do I think it's a fun idea that I absolutely love on its own, but the way they execute it is full of so much creativity and charm, as I'm sure you're sick of hearing about by now, so let's just get to the goddamn point. This theme informs basically everything about the game, from the places we travel through to how the enemies dress and act. A grand majority of Crocodile Isle has stuff that wouldn't be out of place in the swashbuckling era, including both the decks and topsails of gigantic pirate ships, castles, swamps, and other such things. While not every stage in the game is strictly limited to these sorts of environments, and while some may even go for more standard platformer archetypes, they nonetheless invoke an adventurous and even somewhat perilous feeling that ends up fitting perfectly alongside the levels more closely tied to the pirate motif, such as volcanoes, mine shafts, frozen caves, zinger hives, brambles, enchanted forests, and dilapidated amusement parks. I appreciate the creativity they go for, because in my opinion, this all feels like stuff that fits right in on an old, rustic, mostly rundown island home to a crew of self-aggrandizing pirate reptiles. I don't even know how to fully explain it, to be honest. This may sound like I just contradicted myself big time with how I went on and on about how every aspect of this game is pirate themed, but then listed a bunch of level aesthetics it has that seemingly don't have anything to do with that at a glance. But I don't know, man. All of these stage and world aesthetics feel right at home in this game, and I couldn't imagine it without them. What I'm trying to get at here is that Crocodile Isle is a really distinctive area, one which features a surprising amount of world building and environmental storytelling throughout. Take Gloomy Gulch, for example. It's easily the island's most haunted place, with the aptly named Haunted Hall in particular housing this massive, ghostly, skeletal Kremling known as Cackle. It's the kind of thing that makes you ask, who was this guy when he was alive, or what happened to him? That sort of thing. I also love the idea of the zinger hives that just so happen to exist in various parts of the island, namely around the area the Kremlings go to have fun. I find that really captivating, and that may have something to do with me being a sap for construction coexisting with nature. So yeah, that stuff's really cool, and that's all I can really say about it. Although mentioning the Kremlings there really gets me thinking about them, and you know why? Well, they're without a doubt my pick for the strongest aspect of this game's theming, since they're the glue that holds it all together. Every last Kremling enemy in this game, referred to as the Kremling Cutthroats, is wearing some sort of pirate getup, including the Klomps with their peg legs, Cannon's pirate hat and hand cannon, Cutlass's deadly, well, cutlasses, crooks in cloaks with their ridiculous ship captain jackets, and the bandanas on the heads of the rope-climbing clingers and the muscular crunches. In addition, I find the barrel mimic enemies, known as clobbers or kabooms, really funny, because they basically jump scare you and let out this manic scream while dashing towards you. This sometimes catches me off guard and makes me chuckle a bit. My absolute favorite has to be the kaboinks, however. They're a variant of clomps which bounce around on peg legs that are, get this, specially made to contract like telescopes, providing the force necessary to propel them into the air. In other words, as I've heard it described before, pogo peg legs. If that's not the pure essence of creativity, then I don't know what is. Cackle is also a genuinely intimidating enemy due to his sprite's large size, and of course his characteristic laugh that I'm almost certain scared the shit out of the little kids that played this game all those years ago. And I really like how the returning mini-neckies now wear bandanas to fit in with the whole pirate thing. As a whole, these extra flourishes come together to make this cast of baddies even more memorable than they were in DKC 1. Something I'd say even applies to the enemies who aren't strictly pirates, such as clampons. Yes, that is actually their name. Leave your creative remarks down in the comments. Neeks, Flitters, and this Sonic the Hedgehog looking ass known as the Cat of Nine Tails, the returning Zingers with a new, more sleek design, and all the underwater enemies, not the least of which being Snapjaws, or Lockjaws, who can dash across the screen faster than my credit score declines in the presence of Shrek merchandise. Wait, what the hell did I just... And in addition to all those things, I also have to commend the animation work on display in this game. It has a similar puppet-like motion to the first game, which according to your preference may lead you to finding the animations uncanny, but I find it really charming and visually pleasing once again. Besides, personally speaking, I mostly only noticed that the larger sprites, specifically Cackle and the bosses, have this sort of rotoscope-like, arguably stiff movement, because I would say the animation this time around has seen several steps up across the board. The playable characters are essentially on the same level as last time in this regard. I mean, for God's sake, Diddy's sprite is even reused from DKC 1, but it's the enemies where this really shows. There's an admirable amount of little details, like squash and stretch, which enhance the fluidity of their movements and give them a bouncy cartoon feeling. For example, look at how exaggerated Clampon's mouths are. For me, it just sells how hungry and vicious they are for some of that tasty monkey meat. I just realized how wrong that sounds out of context. In addition, I like how crunches appear appropriately rugged and get all angry and red when you hit them. Clomps and kaboings act devious, much like critters from the previous game, and I like the gestures the clanks do to make fun of the Kongs for being too slow. As if the cast of enemies wasn't charming and memorable enough, now they're doubly so. But that's not it. The Kongs have a similar degree of personality injected into their animations. I could bring up how Cranky and Wrinkly appear appropriately weathered for their old age, how Swanky harbors the movements of your typical person from show business, and the aforementioned fact that Funky Kong floats around on his magic surfboard. Well, if it is magic anyway. And yeah, those animations are all well and good. That said, the Kongs that really shine in terms of animation are easily the playable duo. Much like DKC 1, practically every action these characters take has a really charming animation that conveys their personalities. Sadly, I don't think there's a stumbling on the cliff animation, but you do have the fact that Dixie kicks Diddy out of the way when you switch to her, after which Diddy chucks her behind himself when you switch back. That sort of thing shows these Kongs' playful side, demonstrating that while they're going on a treacherous and undoubtedly intimidating journey, they still have each other's backs. This is also expressed in the duo's idle animations, in which Diddy starts juggling and Dixie drinks a juice box. In their victory animations, where Diddy pulls out sunglasses and a boombox and starts rapping, and Dixie plays a sick solo on an electric guitar. That's not even mentioning how entering a boss fight causes the Kong's eyes to pop out of their head like DK's did in the first game's intro. Or how if you remain idle for a moment while clinging to the honey-covered walls in the Zinger hives, you can see Dixie start to taste the honey. You see, it's these little things, these tiny touches that may seem inconsequential that make this game such a joy to engage with. Rare didn't have to include these things, all these small, seemingly unimportant details in their game, but they did anyway, and it only makes me love it even more. I've gone on record saying that I adore when you can tell a game developer was making something special, that they had an immense amount of passion and drive to make their game as great as they could, thereby inspiring them to have some fun with the project, and DKC2 is definitely one of the strongest cases of this I've ever seen, especially in the visuals department. Bravo, mid-1990s Rare. Really excellent stuff. So yeah, this game is a real looker, but do you want to know of an aspect that manages to do its job even better than the already stellar visuals? Why, it's none other than the soundtrack, which, in my honest opinion, is nothing short of an absolute masterpiece. So, do you remember how in the last video, assuming you watched it anyway, when I mentioned that the DKC trilogy is quite reputable for its incredible music alongside its pre-rendered graphics? Well, typically, you'll see DKC2 get cited as the best of the best from this series in this regard, and it's undoubtedly one of the things the game is most known for. Even taking a cursory look around YouTube YouTube for this game's music will bring up a bunch of results, including covers, restorations, those famous checkpoints, and even simple uploads of the tracks with people reminiscing about how much they love the music. Like I said, I think that's for good reason, because this has to be one of my favorite soundtracks from a video game. In short, it takes everything that made the first game's soundtrack so fantastic and brings it up to the next level, all the while downplaying the aspects I felt were notably weaker, which basically means this OST has all the strengths established in its predecessor and none of the weaknesses. Given that I already loved the soundtrack for DKC1 and thought it had some of my favorite songs in gaming history, you can imagine my level of fondness for the music of DKC2. I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record right now, but sometimes redundancy is necessary in selling just how much you love something, and this is definitely one of those cases. So let's stop being so damn vague. What is it about DKC2's soundtrack that makes it so I can't help but give it such high praise? For me, it comes down to a few simple things, all of which are in perfect unity, creating a listening experience that I find difficult to describe. Emotional? Impactful? Moving? How about all of the above, alongside pretty much any word you can potentially come up with to describe something awesome? These songs, and I mean pretty much every last one of them, is an expert showcase of seamlessly blending melody and atmosphere, using the surprisingly high quality sampling capabilities of the SNES's SPC700 sound chip to incredible effect. Yeah, rather than having the odd track that overemphasizes atmosphere to the detriment of a memorable melody, this game instead weaves environmental sounds that fit the area you're running and jumping through into the track itself, which for me is the ideal approach for a DKC soundtrack. It enhances each song by making them, and by extension the levels, more immersive, while also not coming at the expense of a memorable catchy melody. In addition, DKC2 puts that binary to hex translation technique, used in songs like Aquatic Ambience, to practice once again, allowing for complex synth crawls that sound almost alien to the system's sound hardware, which I mean in the best way possible. What results is music with an almost transcendent quality to it, managing to evoke genuine emotion, be it adventurous, dangerous, happy, melancholic, exciting, you name it. Each of these level themes fit perfectly with each area of the island, as I mentioned, and they're the songs I would imagine playing in some of these places if I were to visit them in real life. Well, the ones that could exist in real life anyway. All in all, they make me feel good whenever I hear them, and I frequently play them in the background when I'm doing something else. Shit, I've been doing that at times throughout the process of writing this script, in fact. With all that said though, do you want to know what I think is the most impressive thing about this collection of songs? Oh sure, the technical achievements, superb melodies, and incredible atmospheric and emotional appeal that define this soundtrack deserve all the praise in the world. But there's one factoid about this OST that just seals the deal in my opinion. DKC1 had 3 composers in total, David Wise, Evelyn Novakovic, and Robin Beanland, all of whom were undeniably talented, doing both a commendable job on their own and working together nicely as well. By contrast, the soundtrack of DKC2 was not made by 3 people. It wasn't even made by 2 people either. No, this absolute masterwork was composed in full by only one guy, that of course being David Wise himself. Well, that's actually not fully accurate as I had previously thought, because I have learned recently that Evelyn Novakovic apparently contributed a few tracks, namely In a Snowbound Land, but DKC2's score was largely David's work. If you ask me, that's incredible, and it speaks to Wise's remarkable talent for creating music. Almost single-handedly, he managed to craft this incredible soundtrack full of all those great aspects I just pointed out in detail, and in the process of doing so, he created something that people still fondly remember to this day, almost 3 entire decades since the game first appeared on the market. You could say it's transcended its video game origin, and I've even seen some people who aren't necessarily into the hobby appreciate the game's music, all because they know and love a good song when they hear one. Only the cream of the crop of video game OSTs can get such an honor, so the fact one that managed to break through in that regard, so to speak, was pretty much made by one exceptionally talented person, when most of the time you have whole teams of composers working on those that do, speaks volumes in my eyes. As discussed, David's signature blend of atmosphere and melodic excellence is fully on display here, and in general, these songs are the exact kind of thing that makes me love the best of gaming music so much. Oh wait, what's that? You want me to try to list my favorite tracks in this game like I usually do in these videos? Why the hell would you make me do that? It's like if you asked me to pick my favorite of my cats. I just find it nearly impossible because these tracks are all so sublime. But you know what they say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so I'll try anyways. For me, the best songs this game has to offer are those that inspire a strong feeling in me through their composition, such as tension, serenity, or plainly getting me pumped up to kick some reptile ass. That may sound like a fairly redundant standard to point out. I mean, duh, of course you're gonna pick the music that stands out to you and makes you feel something as the best. And you know what, I'll give you that one. This is really obvious stuff, but I can't help the way I think about these things. I don't really know where to start with this, so why don't we take a look, or more accurately, a listen from the beginning and work our way from there. On the title screen, you're treated to an adventurous tune that sets the tone for the journey you're about to embark on. Upon pressing start, there's a more chill file select theme that plays. Hey, wait a minute. That reminds me of something. I swear I've heard...
It doesn't matter now what happens. I would never give up the fight.
Oh! That's it, this is the best game ever. Might as well stop the review here. In all seriousness, when the game itself loads up, the map screen theme is noticeably different from that of DKC1. Whereas Simeon's segue was laid back, invoking an atmosphere that basically said, hey man, no need to rush, take your time and soak this place in. This game comes in loud and proud, with a grand melody that makes it feel like you've really stepped into enemy territory now. You might be starting to see what I'm saying after all that, but to further illustrate my point, I'll take the first level theme as an example, Clomp's Romp, in much the same way I did with Jungle Hijinks last time around. As you enter the opening stage, Pirate Panic, you're immediately treated to the sounds of crashing waves and the creaking sounds of the ship's deck. Gradually, a drum beat fades in from behind the soundscape. As the song's main melody, a calm, humble sea shanty that puts me, and undeniably many others at ease, comes in. You see, this is exactly what I was getting at. DKC2 takes these ambient sounds and integrates them into the actual music itself, oftentimes using them as a sort of instrument on their own. And guess what the best part is? While Clomp's Romp is an immaculate showcase of this trend and a fantastic track in its own right, I actually think it's one of the game's weaker tracks. Yeah, even the tracks I don't find as impactful as the rest of them are still ones that I love regardless. And the only even remotely negative thing I can say about this OST, and believe me, the word negative is a larger stretch than a rubber band snapping in someone's face, is that a few tracks aren't as resonant as others. So with that said, I'll cut the shit and stop going in circles. I know you want to hear these songs already, so I'll just pick a random choice to avoid banging my head against this brick wall any longer. Sure, why not? How about Hothead Bop? The song that plays in the volcano levels.
Did someone mention volcano?
Shut up! Let me tell you, the song's name is spot on because it's an absolute bop. It has amazing percussion, both from the drums and sound samples of boiling lava, which complements the piano, harmonica, and other instruments, all of which craft a sound that evokes an atmosphere of controlled chaos. Very fitting for the place we're traveling through. Crocodile Cauldron may not be actively erupting, but it's still full of molten rock that will incinerate the Kongs if they make one wrong move. However, if you really want a strong example of a song that uses environment sounds as a prominent instrument, then look no further than Mining Melancholy. This song takes those creepy pickaxe sounds from Misty Menace in the previous game and recontextualizes them, instead creating the feeling of a lively mining operation inside the massive shafts. These levels tend to feature a heavily vertical progression, which, trust me, I'll get to soon enough. And so to emphasize the sheer height, or rather depth, of the shafts, there's a nice echo effect on everything. In general, the song's composition seems to be intentionally airy, which also includes the use of more piano and even zinger hums, which I'd say really complements the setting and creates a strong emotional allure, fitting quite well with those large, beautiful, glistening crystals in the background. I also have to point out the excellence of Jib Jig, a wondrous Irish folk-sounding track that includes thick wind and rain sounds, therefore building a vivid image of a rainy day in my head, one of my favorite types of days in fact. In Crook's March, an extremely tense, march, which plays in the late game castle levels, just as you're truly starting to enter K. Rool's territory and the tension is rapidly rising. Really, I could go into similar obsessive detail about every last one of this game's songs, but I've already been writing this script for long hours across almost every single day, and I have to get sleep at some point, so screw it. I'll just give you a sample platter of some more songs that really jump out at me, in no particular order, and let the tracks themselves do the talking for me. Yeah, like I said, they speak for themselves. All of these songs have something great that stands out to me. For instance, Flight of the Zinger sounds like something that would play in the base of operations, such as, I don't know, a beehive. Boss Bossa Nova, Run Ramby Run, and Haunted Hall are appropriately intense for their unique situations. Lockjaw's Saga has an epic quest feeling about it. In a Snowbound Land is pure bliss. Token Tango is a cool remix of Jungle Hijinks. Forest Interlude is perfect for an enchanted Lost Wood. Primal Rave is mystical in a way. Disco Train is pure fun, fitting for an amusement park. And Bayou Boogie sounds like a Phil Collins song. Still, even with all that laid out, I haven't talked about this game's most famous track. It's the one the game is most remembered for, and in many ways could be considered the aquatic ambience of DKC2. Quite fitting, considering the track was originally intended for a water level that ended up getting axed, resulting in it getting used in the Bramble stages. It's of course the one, the only Sticker Brush Symphony. Yeah, it's really fucking good. That is quite possibly the coldest take of all time, but yes, I can't deny it, this song's a masterpiece. I mean, what other track can you think of from this series, possibly barring other obvious exceptions, that's able to connect with people on an almost metaphysical level and bring them all together as one? For fuck's sake, you can't get anyone these days to agree on anything, and yet this one song is able to draw us all together over a mutual shared love for something. It's able to invoke a melancholic temperament that compels a bunch of stoic adults to reflect on their lives. Man, that was a mouthful. And gather together to simply take a minute, unwind, and share their inner thoughts with others. Hence, these things. Yeah, this is the song that's used for those checkpoints I've brought up a few times in these videos now. Getting recommended one of these is basically a rite of passage of sorts here on YouTube, and if you scroll down to the comments section underneath it, you'll find loads of people reflecting on their lives, including the hardships they've faced, their triumphs, and perhaps most notably, their inner hopes and fears for the future. This track just fuels heavy contemplation in people, and gives them an inner peace in the moment they're hearing it. Maybe their life isn't so great, maybe they're going through a lot and experiencing immense hardship, but for the time being, Sticker Brush Symphony is able to calm them down and perhaps even inspire them to keep moving forward. The song, much like Aquatic Ambience, has one of those trademark synth waveform sounds, which by this point seems to be the mark of a particularly standout DKC music track, and I'd say it's an absolutely perfect blend of catchy and emotional. It has a violin-like instrument that backs a, well, symphony of even more piano and strong drums, which comes together and creates a gorgeous result. It has to be one of my favorite tracks in the entire game, as in top 5 at the very least. I couldn't imagine DKC2 without this track, which is crazy to think about because this song almost didn't make it into the final game. I mentioned how it was intended for a water stage similar to those from DKC1, but that ended up getting cut from the game. Along with it, the track itself was almost left on the cutting room floor, but thankfully that didn't happen. It was included, as I said, in the Bramble levels, which oddly enough, I'd actually say the song fits those levels even better. I don't know, maybe it's just because I've never seen the cut water level, but the mystical atmosphere of the track just fits way better with the cloudy sky setting that Brambles have in my opinion. I think I've spoken my piece on this song. It's phenomenal and easily a top pick for one of my favorite tracks in the whole series. With all that said, however, I still wouldn't say Sticker Brush Symphony is my favorite track in the game. I can easily see the argument for it being the game's best song. I mean, for how much of an impact it's had on people's lives, how could I not? With that in mind though, there's still one song I love even more, and one that's quite possibly my favorite DKC track in general. In my opinion, it's a microcosm of all the fun and personality of this series. Before I would have said Jib Jig filled that niche, but after a while of thinking about it, along with a major realization I came to last year, I've come to believe a song that I previously liked but ultimately thought nothing of is my favorite one in the game. Folks, allow me to introduce you to Snaky Shanty. Oh boy, now this song is really fucking good. I've heard it described as a song that represents a triumphant rebellion against the Kremlings by Ratley, a snake animal buddy introduced in this game that committed mutiny against his former reptile allies and joined the Kongs to try and topple their tyranny. Now, that was a sentence, alright. Anyway, it makes use of the melody from the beginning of Gangplank Galleon, part of the song I had wanted to hear an extended version of since I first played DKC1, and becomes exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. This song is a supremely catchy piano and harmonica piece. My oh my, I'm really starting to notice a pattern with this game's choice of instruments, and how they relate to some of my favorite instrumental sounds, and combines the aforementioned measures from Gangplank Galleon with a more up-tempo remix of Klomp's Romp, resulting in a song that's an absolute riot. In my eyes, this song is the perfect embodiment of the game's pirate theme, and it's jolly upbeat melody gets my blood pumping and psychs me up to charge headfirst into those Kremlings and kick the shit out of them. What's so unfortunate about this song, though, is that it's basically the Ice Cave chant of this game, in the sense of how often it's used. Much like that song was in the previous game, Snaky Shanty is criminally underutilized for how good it is, only playing in the background of a single stage in the game, in this case Rattle Battle. Well, come to think of it, that's not entirely accurate. There is this one little weird area right at the end of Glimmer's Galleon where the song briefly plays, but you're there for so little time that you don't even get a chance to really absorb it. You're only treated to the song in full during Rattle Battle itself, which for me makes that stage a personal highlight of the game, and a section of gameplay I always look forward to when I revisit it. Music is a powerful thing in video games, and when done exceptionally well, it can greatly enhance the experience and even bring it up several pegs, even when the game itself is kinda weak or otherwise not that good. That said, when you have an amazing game with a superb soundtrack, well, there's almost nothing on this gigantic watery rock floating through space that can compare with how great of a feeling that is, and it can make certain sections of the game stand out when they feature some of its best music. Point is, I fucking love Snaky Shanty, and furthermore, the soundtrack of this game in general. Bravo, David Wise, and evidently Evan Novakovic in a few cases. You did an exceptional job yet again, and played a huge part in what made this game in particular so damn special. Oh, and one more quick thing. In case you weren't convinced about how Rare wanted to make the immense passion they injected into this game self-evident, they took the classic DKC death jingle and gave it multiple variations, each fitting with the level track itself. They did not have to do that, but they did anyway. And once again, props to Rareware. Good holy nuggets. Just how long have I been going on about this game already? I don't know as I'm writing, but it has to have been at least 30 to 35 minutes so far. And I haven't said a thing about the actual game mechanics yet. If you ask me, that just goes to show how far ahead this game was compared to many of its contemporaries. Usually when discussing one of these old side-scrollers, I'd have relatively little to say about the aspects outside of the gameplay, because that's what was usually the focus back then. But those things are just so good in DKC2 that I feel compelled to talk about them at such lengths. And yet, with everything I've said in this video so far, would you believe that I'm still really only getting started? I have so much that I want to say about DKC2 as a gameplay experience as well, to the point I'm honestly feeling a little overwhelmed. I have plenty of thoughts about this game in my head over the years, and ever since first completing it a while ago, my appreciation for it has only grown stronger, which to me is the mark of an all-time favorite. So what precisely about this game inspires such a vigorously enthusiastic response in me? To put it simply, every last damn thing about it. And much like the music, I find it difficult to decide on a starting place, because I think every last aspect of this game is just that fantastic. I consider DKC2 to be the poster child for a perfect sequel. Notice how I didn't say perfect game, but rather perfect sequel. No game, not even the most illustrious such as this one, is perfect. Now, by describing the game as a perfect sequel, I mean that in doing its job as a follow-up to a previous work, the game succeeds in every category where it needs to. In that regard, I'd say DKC2 takes everything that its predecessor did and improves on it, cutting those things which didn't work out as well and refining and further fleshing out the things that did. When examining the two games side by side, their gameplay is essentially the exact same. They're both side-scrolling platformers. You have to make it from point A to point B without falling into a bottomless pit or losing both your Kongs. Doing so involves clearing various platforming challenges, avoiding enemies, stage hazards, or other sources of damage until you reach the goal at the end of the level. Alright, now that that boilerplate explanation is out of the way, what exactly is it that DKC2 improves upon from its predecessor? Well, like I said, everything. For one, I'd say the controls are even smoother than last time around. On the surface, we're dealing with essentially the exact same baseline physics and movement here, which is great because of how smooth and snappy I already thought DKC1's movement was. So, you know what they say, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. With that in mind though, there's a few subtle changes to how the Kongs handle this time around, which may seem minor, but for me only makes the game that much more fun to control. For one, when you jump and throw a barrel in midair, the Kongs will now briefly freeze in place rather than continuing to fall back to the ground as you chuck the thing. For obvious reasons, this makes it easier to be precise with your barrel or object throws, which comes in handy on several occasions. Admittedly, it's not like every single moment of every level forces you to be on point with your barrel throws, but in those times they do ask you to be a little more precise, this seemingly small addition makes all the difference. Along with that, and this may just be a placebo effect, I swear that weird quirk the somersault move had in the previous game where it would occasionally stop you in your tracks happens far less often. I don't know how accurate that is because in my observations in a controlled environment, it still seems to happen, but it sure doesn't feel that way when I'm actually running through the levels and playing the game. Together, these things make DKC2 control ever so slightly smoother in my experience. Although, speaking of the somersault, it's once again one of my favorite aspects of this game's controls. I already went on a whole spiel in the last video about what I like so much about this move, so now I'll pretty much just give you the bullet points. It allows you to accelerate quickly from a stop, extend your jumps with the coyote frames it provides off ledges, which in this case feels especially amazing because of the extra bit of skill required to do it effectively, as it doesn't happen automatically. And in many cases, it's an effective attack option when you have no barrels, chests, cannonballs, or whatnot around you to take an enemy out. Or if they're vulnerable to direct attacks from the sides, but damage you if you try to jump on them. As a whole, the move is quite general purpose, being useful as a speedrunning tool, platforming aid, and viable combat option all at once. DKC2 has so many opportunities for you to put this move into practice, therefore allowing you to quickly dispatch enemies that would otherwise get in the way or make it through a platforming section much faster. So yeah, it's just as fun to use in this game, but you know what I've noticed? This move seems overall more integrated into the game's levels, and there's several instances where you're actually expected to use the move effectively to avoid taking damage or losing a life, especially later on. Personally speaking, this makes the move seem way more useful than it was even in DKC1, because now getting used to the move is encouraged and sometimes even required. Some may call that cheap, but honestly, I disagree. Pressing the Y button, either on the move or sitting still, guarantees you'll do the somersault. So if you try to hold down the button to sprint, you're for sure going to find out about it. As a result, I wouldn't say it's like the game forces you to do some obtuse thing all of a sudden just to be harder for difficulty's sake, but that's rather putting a move that's simple to figure out, yet hard to master to a proper test. I don't want to jump the gun too early with this discussion, but for my money, DKC2 is an absolute masterclass in terms of game design and challenge. I'll get into that later, so keep your eyes peeled. In any event, all that talk about the somersault reminds me. This game introduces a few brand new moves to the series that would become mainstays going forward, and in my opinion, they're natural additions that are all rather useful in their own right. So remember how in DKC1 the Kongs had minor differences in how they played? DK was the stronger of the two, being able to eliminate some enemies with the age-old jump to the head technique that Diddy couldn't, whereas Diddy accelerated a little quicker, had a faster top running speed, and jumped higher to compensate. In this game, there's a similar system going on between Diddy and Dixie, but with even greater differences. In some ways, Dixie does act as the stand-in for DK in that she's a bit slower, and even holds barrels over her head like he did, except with her ponytail, so that's cool. By contrast, Diddy is still the same fast and nimble character he was last time, and also still holds barrels directly in front of him, providing a protective shield from enemies. This may make it seem like Diddy is still usually the best choice in any given situation, but in reality it's not that simple, and it's all because of the special ability they gave Dixie, her helicopter hair. As expected, when you hold the Y button down after jumping, Dixie will spin around in midair, using her ponytail as a means of slowing her descent. I think the reasons why such a move is so awesome in a platformer are pretty self-explanatory, but in case you're just not that well versed in the genre, it's like the somersault but even more powerful. It allows you to extend the length of your jumps extremely far, potentially correct any mistakes you may have made, or stall yourself in the air long enough to make a tricky landing. This move is yet another useful platforming tool, both as a beginner and a veteran who's played it countless times. It can act as training wheels for newcomers, helping them get accustomed to the game and acquire a feel for its controls and platforming, while for experienced players it can be yet another tool that can help them keep the pace of the game up and allow you to improve your runs of a stage. Yeah, even as someone who can get through this game fairly quickly, I use this ability as often as everything else, because it's still immensely useful in so many situations. Like the somersault, it's also incorporated into the levels sometimes, namely in some of the game's secrets, so yeah, there's that too. New to this game is also another staple mechanic from this series, which similarly comes in handy periodically throughout. In DKC1, you could either press the A button or select to switch to the other Kong, assuming you had both of them, but in this game that can only be done with the latter. That's because the A button is now mapped to the aforementioned new move, the team up ability. When you engage this ability with both Kongs present, your partner will jump on the shoulders of the character you're controlling, and in this state you're able to throw your Kong by pressing the Y button and aiming with the D-pad. Holding up will predictably result in your other Kong traveling, well, upwards, which can help you grab items in the air, reach areas too high to get up to with a jump, or whack an enemy from below, while holding a horizontal direction has somewhat different results depending on whether you're grounded. If you are, your partner gets tossed a short distance in front of you, whereas if you do it in the air, they become more like a projectile and have a better chance at hitting or taking out enemies. I must be honest, while this move isn't as general purpose as the somersault for example, I still end up using it rather often because it's a fantastic combat option. In some cases, it's even the only direct attack, which is to say an attack that doesn't depend on an object object you pick up that can kill certain foes. It's also rather useful for getting to areas just out of reach, which may allow you to find some secrets, and is even frequently required when going after the game's side quests, which, as with several things I've brought up already, I'll get to in due time. I well and truly enjoy using this ability, and while it's a little more situational than other moves, I wouldn't say that hampers its effectiveness to any significant degree. Although I'm not a fan of how missing a throw makes your Kong partner take damage, therefore causing you to lose them, that got obnoxious in those rare instances it's an issue. Yeah, okay, I'll admit it. I might have gotten a little bit carried away there talking about this game's new additions, but that can't be helped. I love this game, and if you really get me going on about a subject I'm passionate about, whether positively or negatively, I'll become like your drunk uncle during an awkward family dinner. I think that's fairly evident by now. I've basically exhausted all I can talk about for the new additions this game makes in a general mechanics sense, but there are a few things carried over from the previous game that I've seen major improvements that I also feel the need to discuss. For one, in my experience, the camera is better in this game than it was last time around. In DKC 1, the camera didn't constantly get in the way, and was generally competent at panning and showing you what's coming up so you could react in time, but there were still those moments that managed to slip through. Be it enemy placement that wasn't the greatest, or a situation that didn't allow the camera the leeway to properly pan, or what have you. Sometimes you could be blindsided by enemies or hazards you couldn't see in time. It's the kind of thing that's possible to get around through repeated playthroughs of the game, but not ideal nonetheless. In comparison, DKC 2's camera manages to pave over those occasional faults, at least in my experience, thereby making the game just that slightest bit smoother to play. It doesn't completely resolve the issue, and in extremely rare circumstances there still may be a slight hiccup, namely in one of the vertical sections, but they're now so few and far between that I can probably count them on one hand, and horizontally I'd say it's practically perfect in this regard, or at least about as good as it can get one of these old side-scrolling platformers. Additionally, the bosses in this game are light years ahead of the borderline anti-bosses from the first game. While I wouldn't call them the most intricate, exciting fights in video game history, because I'll be honest, I wouldn't have a solid answer as to what even qualifies for such a title, but I do know that I find them way more interesting than those of DKC 1. In short, this time around, they all have actual patterns that you have to dodge, as well as distinct phases that gradually escalate in difficulty as they progress. For example, Cleaver starts off by simply throwing fireballs at you, which you'll have to jump over, after which a cannonball drops from above, which you can throw at him to deal damage. After a few short rounds of this, the hand holding the ghostly sword sinks into the magma below, which is when Cleaver himself starts floating around and chasing the Kongs. At this point, you'll have to outrun him by jumping on the hooks that spawn in, and upon reaching the other side of the arena, there's another cannonball waiting for you. A few cycles of avoiding him and hitting him later, and Cleaver will be out of commission. Creepy Crow may just be one of the best examples of this, as his fight sees you jumping over ghostly mini-neckies, jumping on the sole living one and then damaging Crow with a barrel. This goes on for 3 phases, which gradually see the swooping mini-neckies get faster and more numerous. And in between each of these is a short sequence where you have to avoid falling eggs on these ropes, and it's all around a good time. Cudgel and King Zing can also be quite enjoyable, with the former having you run away from the huge Kremling as he attempts to crush you, and jumping when he lands to avoid getting stunned, and the latter seeing you control Squawks in a battle to the death with a gigantic Zinger, presumably the husband of Queen Bee from the previous game. I enjoy fighting these guys, and I also like their character designs, especially Cleaver and Cudgel. It's also cool how the first boss in the game, Crow, comes back later as a ghost with a considerably harder fight, so yeah. However, by my reckoning, the most significant mechanical improvement DKC2 makes over its predecessor has to be how the animal buddies are handled. In the last game, I thought they were an excellent idea, but had a few limiting factors that prevented the concept from reaching its full potential. Here in the sequel, though, they've gone all in on fleshing the idea out, and what we got is easily my pick for the strongest animal buddy roster in the whole series, bar none. A few of the best buddies from the last game make a return, including Rambi the Rhino and Ungard the Swordfish, and in my eyes, they have never been better. In my experience, Rambi's controls feel overall less heavy, stiff, and delayed, which in turn makes me enjoy using him more, though that could be another nasty placebo effect rearing its ugly head. Who knows? The Rhino is the same powerhouse he was last time, and similarly so is Ungard, but for water stages. A really cool new addition these two have seen is their charge move, which allows you to hold the A button down to wind up an extremely strong attack. Releasing the button will unleash said attack, as your buddy charges forward at rocket speeds, completely obliterating every enemy unfortunate enough to be in your way. This move is also used to break open some walls when looking for the game's many secrets, so there's that too. Overall, these two are as fun as they were to use in DKC1, and I would argue even better. That being said, the returning buddy that experienced the most change is definitely Squawks the Parrot, who has seen an absolute glow up in this game. Squawks, who was once a simple utility animal buddy, only serving the incredibly niche purpose of lighting up the dark caves of Torchlight Trouble, is now fully playable. He can fly around by mashing the B button and attack enemies by spinning eggs using the Y button, both of which are extremely powerful in their own way. His egg attack kills pretty much every enemy in one hit, regardless of which enemy type they are, and you can actually fly pretty damn fast if your mashing speed is up to snuff, therefore making him a blast to use whenever they give you access to him. I love playing as Squawks in this game, and yeah, while his physics may take a second to get used to, I find that he controls just fine and is a blast to use. He also has a purple variant named Quawks, who can't spit eggs and can only descend. Yeah, kind of a boring buddy, so they restrict him to only a single level. That makes him come off more as a set piece in his own right rather than a character, which I think is the ideal role for him, assuming Quawks is absolutely necessary. Because, you know, wouldn't it be lame if they built several overlong levels around him rather than the green egg-spitting bird you actually want to play as? Anyway, in keeping with the running theme with this game, it seems, DKC2 also introduces a few new animal buddies to go along with the returning ones. To be frank, these new buddies are probably my favorite ones in the game, because I find their abilities to be the most useful and fun to use out of them all. Rattly the rattlesnake is one that jumps out to me, quite literally, because that's what his mechanics revolve around. He's essentially the replacement for Winky the frog, and is able to jump extremely high, reaching places the Kongs only could by using the team-up move. His charge ability equivalent also feeds into this focus on high jumps, and holding the button down causes him to begin building up the strength for a super jump, after which you can release it to make the snake fly into the air. In my opinion, Rattly is basically a more mobile, more fun version of Winky. His combat abilities are the exact same, and he can take out any enemy as long as you jump on their heads, as is the basis for his special abilities. But in my experience, Rattly is way more mobile and free-flowing because his controls feel way smoother and less restrictive to me. Whenever I'm able to play as Rattly, I have a blast, because he's such a powerhouse. Admittedly, I didn't used to be this glowingly positive about him, and like many new players likely do, I had some trouble getting used to his controls, because in some cases they really do ask you to be pretty accurate with his jumps. It also may have something to do with the fact horizontal movement can only be done with jumps, which some folks may experience issues adjusting to. That being said, I'm not one to immediately write something off as crap in a game if I have trouble with it, and I was willing to learn and get to grips with Rattly's controls. In doing so, I managed to find one of my favorite buddies in the entire series, because his high jump truly is that powerful and his movement is a fun change of pace if you ask me. My pick for the game's best new animal buddy, and quite possibly my favorite buddy in the game, and by extension the series though, god what a mouthful, is definitely Squitter the Spider. With this guy by your side, you essentially become an unstoppable killing machine, able to plow through enemies from a distance before they even have a chance to retaliate. It's all because of Squitter's attack, which is naturally a web that he shoots. This web isn't like Spider-Man's where it simply immobilizes the enemies, no. It's pretty much a straight up bullet that takes enemies out in a single hit, in the same vein as Squawks' egg attack. Difference is, while Squawks' eggs had a fixed arcing trajectory that you couldn't alter in any way, Squitter's webs are spit straight ahead, which in my opinion makes it a little easier to be precise with your shots. On top of that, you can also redirect the momentum of his webs with the D-pad, and holding up or down while pressing the Y button to shoot will cause them to arc in their respective direction, making it so you can directly attack enemies that don't share an axis with you. That's why I'd say you should jump at the opportunity to use Squitter at every chance you get. He's so damn powerful. But that's not all he's good for. Instead of some sort of charge ability, pressing the A button or one of the shoulder buttons will cause Squitter to shoot a slower web that doesn't harm enemies. No, instead pressing your button of choice again while the web is still on screen will cause it to turn into a temporary platform. Honestly, do I even need to explain why this is so sweet? It allows you to blast over the game's levels extremely quickly, but doing so is no gimme, and you still have to be skilled at enemy avoidance and using Squitter's main attack to take full advantage of the ability. It makes that glorious moment when everything clicks, and you're able to blast through stages with the spider all the sweeter. In addition, there's also several levels that put his abilities to great use, and truly test your skill with them, in much the same way as the other animal buddies, so that's always swell. Oh yeah, and I better mention, there are two non-playable buddies, Glimmer the anglerfish and Clapper the seal. The former is basically Squawks' DKC1 incarnation, except underwater, while the latter does a few things that allow you to progress through a stage, like cooling off lava and freezing over water. Basically, they all act as set pieces on their own, kind of like Quawks, except you don't directly control them. Although, speaking of the levels themselves, I should probably get into that. Since, you know, it's already been nearly an hour and I still haven't talked about them, I have a lot to say about that particular aspect of this game, so yeah. By this point, I'm pretty sure I've made it no secret what I think of the level design in this game. I mean, you are probably able to infer, based on the unrelenting praise I've been sending DKC2 throughout this extraordinarily long video. But yeah, I think it's brilliant. In fact, I would go so far as to say that, in my opinion anyway, this game is some of the tightest, most satisfying, most interesting, and best stages ever put to a 2D plane. If you ask me, not much else is able to match the sheer degree of quality that's on display here. And I'd say this game is, in many ways, a masterclass on how to construct an engaging, challenging, and most of all, fulfilling platforming experience. Once again, I know, for the sphere of fans that surround this series, that is probably one of the most frigid takes you've ever heard. It's so cold it's reaching absolute zero, but I can't help the way I think, like I said, and this is one of those cases where I have to agree with the majority consensus. This game is a platforming masterpiece, especially in terms of its levels and how they're constructed, as far as I'm concerned anyway. It's one of those cases where I have a lot of fun in the moment while I'm playing the game, but when it comes to think about and analyze the levels and what makes them tick in a critical sense, rather than noticing a bunch of issues, however big or small they may be, I only find my appreciation for the game growing stronger. So what exactly about this game's level design is so fantastic? Well, as is the trend for practically everything about this game, its level design carries over the things that were great about the stages of DKC 1, solidifying them as series standards, while improving on and upping the ante for every last aspect and cutting out all the fat and weaker qualities. It basically means DKC 2's level design is comprised of the same strengths from last time around, except even stronger, without any of those rare little nagging issues I brought up in the previous video. I already mentioned the camera, which I feel was greatly improved in this game, but then you have that variety issue I delved into for DKC 1, where I thought many of that game's levels could start to feel a little samey after a while due to relying on a lot of the same set pieces. I will admit they did mix and match them in fairly interesting ways at times, enough to keep the game from becoming monotonous. But even with things like the overabundance of cave and mine levels, including 2 whole worlds themed around them, I tend to find some parts of the game a little lacking in excitement whenever I come back to them. And sometimes I even find myself forgetting about a few levels' existence entirely. By contrast, DKC 2's stages manage to avoid falling into such a trap, and as such the game manages to stay fresh and interesting throughout, all because of one seemingly simple thing. In my many playthroughs of this game over the years, I've taken notice of the sheer amount of level variety it has, something that I've come to appreciate a great deal. Well, I always have really, but especially now. This variety is present in the level set pieces themselves, including any mechanics they introduce, the enemies and hazards present, and even something as simple as the stage's general structure, horizontal or vertical. Speaking of which, while most of DKC 1's levels progressed horizontally till you reach the exit, DKC 2's tend to have a more complex, albeit still straightforward structure, including a greater amount of verticality, for instance, which I greatly appreciate. Even with those things said, it's productive variety, and by that I mean the game never loses sight of what it wants to be. A tight, laser-focused platformer that provides a consistent challenge, which properly escalates as it goes along, all the while reinventing itself and using its mechanics in new and interesting ways. In summary, it's everything I love about this series, and genre for that matter, rolled into one convenient package. This game is constantly thinking of new ideas to play ball with, and it often gets really creative with its set pieces, or at least I would say so. In many ways, every last level does something new, and if it relies on a mechanic you've seen before at some point, it's mixed up or reinvented in some way to prevent it from feeling the exact same as before. For example, Slime Climb has you outrun rising water full of deadly lockjaws, while a later level, Toxic Tower, sees you doing something similar, outrunning deadly acid. You instead play as several of the animal buddies and have to escape it using their abilities, so it's almost entirely its own thing. Another fantastic example would be the 3 roller coaster levels, which function as the equivalent to the minecart from last time. You may have just heard me say there's 3 of them, and yes, that's one more than the previous game had, but they constantly keep changing things up in each. The first, Target Terror, has you jumping between carts, which by the way have a really cool skull design, and either hitting checkmark barrels to open doors or avoiding X barrels that close them. Rickety Race is a jump with the cart variant, and pits you in a race against 9 clanks you'll have to win for full completion. This level is insanely fast and exhilarating, especially if you find the hidden speed boost barrel. Finally, there's Haunted Hall, which I have mentioned a bit. It essentially combines the concepts of the previous 2 roller coaster stages, being a jump with the cart level that has you hitting a certain class of barrels while avoiding another. This time though, instead of opening or closing doors that damage you if you hit them when they're closed, Cackle chases behind you as a timer counts down to your doom, and you have to keep hitting the green plus sign barrels to keep it up, and avoiding the red minus barrels, which obviously decrease the time you have left. If time runs out, Cackle lands a hit on you, either making you lose a Kong or die. All 3 of these have the same core set piece, a vehicle you jump around in, but they each take a unique approach to the point that they all feel distinct, and that's only just 3 out of the 39 total non-boss levels in the game. My point in this matter is that no 2 levels feel exactly alike, which makes each stage distinct and memorable in its own right, therefore preventing any part of this game from becoming tiresome for me. Even if I ever end up blanking on the name of a particular level, I'm often able to remember what that level actually does, which in my opinion is the really important part. Of course, more of those quirky, fun names definitely don't hurt, so I'm all for that. This is a rare case, a game that I wholeheartedly believe doesn't have so much of a dull moment to its name. It's one where I'm always engaged in whatever I'm doing from beginning to end, never getting bored or tired tired out, or even feeling that the game is sagging and like it should pick up the pace. Yeah, that is largely because of the variety I just mentioned a second ago, but also because behind all of it, the game sticks to a solid set of core principles, initially established for this series in the first game, that are used as a jumping off point, maybe even a template of sorts, to create wildly creative set pieces. At their heart, every stage in this game emphasizes a design philosophy of consistent pacing, placing hazards and set pieces in such a way to facilitate a constant, uninterrupted flow for experienced players. The idea is that through repeated playthroughs and getting better at the game, you'll eventually be able to take these levels that may have given you trouble before and plow through them, never letting up the throttle one bit. Be it through using the moveset in creative, out-of-the-box ways, or simply be fast and precise at the intended method. The short-term goal may be simply to reach the end of each level, but in the long term, the game becomes a playground for demonstrating your platforming prowess, all projected through the lens of a well-crafted and fair challenge that, from my point of view, never gets overbearing. With that said, holy cow does this game not hold back when it comes to the challenge. If you thought DKC 1 was tricky, which it definitely could be sometimes, then DKC 2 makes that game look like child's play. I briefly mentioned the fact that some outlets and platforming veterans had criticized the original game for being too easy back in the day, and in response, Rareware decided to make the second game a more challenging affair. As a whole, DKC 2's levels feature a greater abundance of enemies, more treacherous stage layouts with a larger amount of bottomless pits or otherwise deadly floors, jumps that often require quick reaction times and precision, and frequent set pieces that force you to keep moving along quickly or you'll end up dying. It's not a game that holds your hand, and believe me, despite its charming presentation, this game can be a real tough cookie. As with DKC 1 though, this is something I love about the game. It's not afraid to offer a real challenge and require a bit of effort to get through, and as discussed, I think it's the best kind of challenge. You're given some mechanics that are simple to pick up, and it's up to you to build up the skill set necessary to get through each stage, so that you're eventually able to master the game provided you're willing to persevere. At the end of the day, the only thing that's going to prevent you from passing a stage is your own level of skill, and not some arbitrary crap tossed in for the sake of making the game harder just for difficulty or longevity's sake. And I think its difficulty progression is essentially pitch perfect, starting off simple and gradually growing in complexity as the game continues on. And again, once you push past that skill barrier, you'll gradually begin to make less mistakes, which will naturally allow you to plow through the game with an uninterrupted flow of movement. If you ask me at least, that right there is the mark of a well-designed game. As a whole, each of the levels in this game follows a simple yet ingenious structure. It was also present in DKC 1, but I think it's even more evident in this game. When you begin a stage, you'll be introduced to the mechanic it's going to use, whatever that may be. You're shown how said mechanic works in a controlled, safe environment with very few enemies or pits to worry about. As you press on and make it further into the level, they gradually start introducing the elements in a more tricky way, asking you to avoid a few enemies with basic patterns, or possibly avoid falling into a pit or other deadly hazard at the bottom of the screen. Around the time you reach the checkpoint is where they really start to test you on what you've learned, introducing even tougher instances of the level set piece and requiring you to be at the top of your game to get through unscathed. Then at the end, they go crazy with it, maybe by subverting the idea in a clever way or taking it to its logical extreme, or what have you, right before you reach the finish line, thus clearing yet another awesome stage. Now, not every single level follows this exact structure to a T. Some play around with it or shake it up in some way, but at their core, the general pattern of introduce concept, play around with it, and then throw everything the level has in your way is baked into the spirit of every stage. It's an almost rhythmic progression, starting off with a simple melody and then gradually crescendoing and increasing in complexity as the melody continues, until finally resolving on a satisfying note, so to speak. Quite fitting, to be honest, considering the greatness of the game's soundtrack. I'm aware this is a pretty standard structure when it comes to platformers, but DKC 2 is definitely one of the best applications of it I have ever seen, and goddamn how many times have I said that. Seriously though, I can't think of a single level in this game that I don't like. They're all just that sublime. While I've praised the variety of the set pieces, I think the greatest thing about this game's levels is the actual content present within. This game's levels have some of the most satisfying platforming challenges and set pieces I've ever personally experienced, and I'd say they're always firing on all cylinders when it comes to this aspect of the game's design. That three-part introduce, experiment, climax structure I just discussed is, as I said, put into practice to great effect, producing some of the most amazing levels in this entire series, if not in gaming as a whole. There's so many examples I can list in detail, so if I were to sit here and dissect each one, well, much like the music, we'd be here all damn day. So I'll spare you from all the unnecessary details and just list a few examples that really stand out to me. One level archetype that I can't get enough of is the mineshafts, and in my opinion, they often have some of the game's most enjoyable ideas. For example, Canon's claim for Crocodile Cauldron is a really fun barrel blast stage. featuring those iconic barrel cannons in one of their, for my money, best appearances yet, as you're asked to bob and weave through zingers and eliminate cannons and other Kremling baddies. Then later in the same world, you have the level Squawks' Shaft, which is similarly filled to the brim with barrel blasting and encounters with crooks, one of my personal favorite enemies in the game. At the end, you're then given your first taste of Squawks, who has his capabilities properly taught to you in a short section before they throw a few enemies at you that you're able to dominate with his egg-spitting ability. In the game's final world, K. Rool's Keep, is Windy Well, a mineshaft stage that includes a vertical wind set piece. You have to maneuver through hordes of zingers, most notably while ascending, but also by timing your movements to pass underneath them in a few horizontally aligned areas. All in all, these levels are some of my favorites in the game, and I love playing them. But that's only one kind of stage, as I said. There's so many more. The main brace levels are some more of my favorites, featuring set pieces like ropes to climb on and the aforementioned rising piranha-infested waters you have to outrun. Speaking of those ropes, they're easily one of my favorite types of set pieces in the game, and in typical DKC2 fashion, they're used in so many creative ways. For instance, Crockhead Clamber features cattail plants that act like them, alongside Crockhead enemies you have to jump on before they recede back into the swamp's mud. Chainlink Chamber has you dodge zingers by quickly climbing the level's vertical chains, and jumping up and down through sections with a bunch of horizontal ones to outrun more of them, thus producing an extremely fun challenge that I really love. And Ghostly Grove has, well, ghostly ropes that disappear after a while. On top of that, I love the stages that include those hooks you can jump on, such as Mudhole Marsh. The Zinger Hive levels have honey-covered walls that you can cling to, and honey floors that you can only move horizontally on by jumping, as well as some slightly slow yet still enjoyable enemy avoidance, such as in the case of Parrot Shoot Panic, or this intense chase sequence with Rambi and King Zing and Rambi Rumble. The Bramble levels put set pieces such as barrel cannons or ropes into tight corridors with deadly spiky walls, ceilings, and floors, making them notably trickier. In the Volcano levels,
Did someone mention?
have some cool ideas like Hothead Pops, Croc Heads that bounce you around, Red Hot Rides, hot air balloons, and Lava Lagoon's Magma you have to jump on Clapper to cool off. Well, if you consider that a volcano level anyway. Castle Crush forces you to avoid getting crushed with an extremely challenging yet fun rising floor set piece, and so on and so forth. Hey, it's me from the future in post-production. Yeah, I think that's correct. Anywho, I just mentioned Castle Crush, a pretty cool stage with a Crusher set piece, didn't you know? But I noticed I forgot to bring up something rather infamous. It's a particularly strong glitch by the name of, well, what else but the Castle Crush glitch. If you put this one DK barrel near the beginning of the level down and immediately pick it back up again, as Diddy, he'll start holding nothing. When you throw the barrel, any number of things can happen, including enemies flying towards you, and if the Rambi barrel appears, it turns you into a garbled version of a character such as Clubba. Oh yeah, or the game can just totally freeze. In fact, the glitch can be so corruptive that it can screw up your save data, even to such an extent that you'll have to physically replace the battery in your cartridge, thus clearing its SRAM, to even make the game playable again. Apparently, the frequent claim that this glitch can totally brick your cartridge entirely isn't true, but even if that's the case, I wouldn't risk messing with this on real hardware. Although I did almost do it on accident when I was playing one time, which nearly made me shit my pants when I realized before it was too late. So there's that. In my opinion, this glitch is as insane as it is hilarious. It's evidently caused by a mismatched pointer in the game's memory, and the second part with the Rambi barrel is supposedly the result of a buffer overflow bug, since it references sprites not used in this level. If you understood a word of what I just said, then congrats, you deserve a cookie. Essentially, the game is screwed with to the point of its memory becoming whacked out and referencing the incorrect objects and sprites. Not necessarily an uncommon type of glitch, but nonetheless, the fact it can physically affect the cartridge and require an SRAM reboot is crazy. Also, these miscolored sprites are cursed as fuck. Just want to put that out there. That's all I really have to say about this glitch. It's really weird and kind of funny, and just, I wouldn't risk doing it on real hardware, but if you want to, do it on an emulator. But I mean, if you really want to do it on your own cartridge and have to take the battery out, I mean, I won't stop you. I mean, it's not, I'm not your dad. But anyway, back to your regularly scheduled, video. These stages with barrel cannons you have to rotate yourself are also quite cool in my opinion. Although, word of warning, be sure to play this game on SNES 9X rather than ZSNES. Because if you're emulating like I am for your viewing pleasure, as I don't have RGB SCAR for my SNES, these barrels constantly rotate beyond your control on the ladder, essentially making the stages with this mechanic unplayable. Regardless of that, really fun set piece. Hell, I'd even say I enjoy the occasional water stages, because they often mix up swimming with on-land platforming in a pretty fun way. And that's still not including the Animal Buddy stages. Yeah, while the Animal Buddy is still something sometimes function like Yoshi in this game, where the Kongs ride on their back and you dismount from the buddy when you get hit. There's some instances where you can enter a barrel with a picture of a buddy on it. When you enter, your Kongs get transformed into the buddy depicted, allowing you to directly control said buddy without having to worry about them running away from you if you take damage. This may seem odd, but it's necessary for one of my favorite aspects of this game's level design, that being just how integrated the animal buddies feel this time around. In DKC 1, they more or less just feel like power-ups that you're occasionally able to use, but in this game, they can sometimes be a level set piece in and of themselves. For example, I brought up Rattle Battle earlier, which is a level that turns you into Rattly and sees you jumping on enemies and using them as platforms. But there's so much more than that. Web Woods, easily the game's longest stage, has you gain control of Squitter as he deals with enemies over a gigantic extended bottomless pit. Arctic Abyss transforms you into On Guard as he plows through legions of underwater enemies, etc, etc. You see, this is the exact thing I said I wanted in DKC 1. Levels that take advantage of the animal buddies' unique abilities and make them feel more integrated into the journey itself, bringing out the best of their movesets. It's this right here that makes DKC 2 have my favorite incarnation of the animal buddies in the series. They're such a strong complement to the experience, their levels are some of my favorites in the entire game, and I love using them. Oh, and if you weren't fully convinced about the buddies in this game, in some levels they even have hidden animal buddy crates, like DKC 1, so you're sometimes encouraged to explore to find them. So yeah, there's that too. Though if you want to talk about exploration, this game has plenty of that. In many instances, these levels have hidden areas that contain items such as bananas, banana coins you can use to buy things, and yes, extra lives. There's also some collectibles for the side quests in each level, but hold that thought. I'm taking it one step at a time here. I find it really satisfying when I'm able to find secret items that reward looking around, and I'd say it adds a nice extra thing to occupy yourself with in these stages, as if everything else wasn't enough already. In addition to that, because bringing up extra lives there reminded me, this game has them in abundance, and I find it way easier to max out your life count in this game without any sort of infinite life trick or grinding, as long as you know what to do and where to look. Personally, I think that's great, because the save system is basically the same as last time around, except for one notable difference. For one, you still can't save on demand and have to reach a dedicated save point on the map screen, which can be placed at a completely random spot in the world. In addition, the first time you save, Wrinkly allows you to do so for free, but every time after that, using the same save point costs 2 banana coins. This is one of the rare things I can say DKC 2 downgrades from its predecessor, and I find it pretty weird why they did this. I can certainly agree it's kind of dumb, but hey, Kong College's theme is damn great. Even with that in mind, however, I still honestly think the degree to which that's an issue has been somewhat exaggerated. I mean, banana coins are extremely common, so if you're paying attention, you shouldn't have any issues with that. But I also never get a game over because of the large amount of extra lives present in the game. Granted, I'm by no means a newcomer to DKC 2 anymore, which undoubtedly affects my viewpoint, but still. At the end of each level, you no longer simply see a sign indicating that's the exit, and instead there's a bonus minigame in the form of a high striker. You know, one of those carnival games where you have to whack a target with a hammer as hard as possible. Well, in this game, you'll see a bunch of items flashing, which in most cases includes an extra life balloon. In order to earn one of those items, you have to find out how to hit it with enough force, which involves jumping on the target from a high place, which can be off a piece of stage geometry, off a hook, or what have you. Obviously, you'll earn the item that's visible at the moment you hit the target, so you have to time it correctly to earn whichever item you want. Basically, it's a high striker that takes the form of a slot machine, and it's an incredible source of lives. Seriously, if you're good at timing so you get the balloon consistently, you can rack up lives like nobody's business. Like I implied, not every stage in the game has one, but a grand majority, what feels like at least greater than 80% of all stages to me, do. That alone is great and all, but if it's still not enough, you can basically purchase lives from Swanky's bonus bonanza. Just pay him a few banana coins, answer some simple questions, and you'll be rewarded an extra life balloon. You may have to guess on some questions, meaning it may require a couple attempts, but thankfully the questions never change. So as long as you have enough banana coins, you can brute force your way to those lives. Each round of this rewards a total of 6 lives, and since every one of the 6 worlds has one, that's 36 free lives. Assuming you have enough banana coins anyway. Oh yeah, and you can't forget about the Kong letters and the abundance of bananas, which are still here and accounted for. When paired with all the lives it's possible to earn from the end level minigame, as well as those you can find from exploring, you should be amply stocked for the journey ahead. In my eyes, that's just overall good game design, and I'd say it's an improvement over DKC 1's difficulty balancing. This game also removes those annoying animal buddy bonus stages that pretty much just got in the way for me in the last game, so that's also a plus. See, what did I tell you? I've been yapping about this for a while, and it's all because this game has so many damn examples of great stages. And outside of one potential counterexample, which I'll get into later, it doesn't have even one that I dislike. In addition, the general game design and difficulty balancing have seen substantial improvements if you ask me. And outside of the weird paid saving thing, I think this game is overall more player friendly than its predecessor already was, which makes it even easier to appreciate the pure artistry of the level design and gameplay as a whole. That's the power of DKC 2, and it's what I've essentially been building up to this whole video. Rareware was putting their best foot forward for this game, and while the aesthetics and other external qualities exemplify that, they're merely the cherry on top of an incredible, fulfilling, polished, nuanced video game experience that's crafted with a vigor that's exceptionally rare to come by. It's not every day that you get a game that excels so strongly in everything it tries to do, and even many of my favorite games have several flaws I can point out to varying degrees of detail, no matter how inconsequential they are to my experience in those cases. To be honest, DKC 2 really isn't one of those cases. I have no hang-ups with calling it a near-perfect game, since in every place it needed to succeed, I think it did. It's all around a friggin' excellent title, and as a result, I can't even count the amount of times I've come back to it, for no other reason in particular than I just love it that much. But with all that laid out, would you believe me if I said there's still more to go over? Yeah, everything I've just raved about with this game's gameplay is only most of the equation, and it still has one more returning staple of this series. Much like DKC 1, this game has a percentage next to your save file, and within each stage there's a few bonus rooms hidden, usually between 1 to 3 or so. In order to achieve full completion and maximize your save's completion percentage, which now tops out at 102%, very clever, I must say, you'll once again have to track down every single bonus room. They can be accessed in a couple of ways, including entering an opening in the wall, whether it's already there or requires completing a simple puzzle or action to find, such as using an animal buddy's charge ability to break it open, or by loading a cannon with a cannonball that can be found somewhere nearby. However, in most cases, the bonus rooms are accessed from distinctive barrels with their own unique sprites, which have a letter B with a snazzy explosion bubble shape on them. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I'm not a professional graphic designer, to say the least. Personally, I think this is a massive improvement over the previous game because it eliminates any and all guesswork that was present there. Back in DKC 1, bonus rooms accessed from a barrel cannon looked the exact same as any other automatic one, which wasn't ideal. Here in DKC 2, though, as I said, the distinct appearance these things have helps immensely, and it makes the experience of looking for them way more fun for me. Now I know what to look out for, and the challenge of tracking them down is entirely focused on finding a distinct item rather than mindlessly combing every last square inch, and hoping that you manage to come across that one bonus room you're missing. Sure, there's still the occasionally more obscure one, but a grand majority of the time I notice that this game has way better conveyance for its bonus rooms, and frequently leaves hints and visual cues that clue you into the fact that there may be a secret hiding there, such as bananas, which makes the rooms overall much less cryptic. I really appreciate that because, again, the less unnecessary guesswork the better. Anywho, upon actually entering a bonus room, you'll notice that there's been some pretty significant changes made to how they operate, all for the better in my opinion. Rather than being a random bonus minigame meant to give you items, this game features short, dedicated challenges that weirdly enough almost remind me of Rareware microgames. Comparisons are truly the highest form of analysis, aren't they? Each one asks you to carry out a simple task in a time limit, including defeating a certain amount of enemies, completing a short platforming challenge, or collecting a particular amount of stars, complete with a neat little title card for each. Finishing a bonus challenge rewards you with a creme coin, which is what actually marks the bonus room as finished and counts it towards your completion percentage. As a result, you're actually required to beat every bonus room to achieve full 102% completion. And weirdly enough, I also think Swanky's bonus bonanza is required for that as well, but that's beside the point. Personally, I'm all for this change, because I really enjoy these little minigames. They're a quick burst of fun that, in most cases anyway, I feel keep the pace moving along steadily. Occasionally, there may be a slightly more annoying bonus room that somewhat breaks away from the game's otherwise fantastic pacing, but those are few and far between, and even then, they're nothing that shouldn't be possible to clear within a couple of tries. In my opinion, actually requiring you to clear these gives them a lot more purpose, and it makes this whole thing feel like a proper side quest rather than a vague collection of bonus minigames that seem to exist just because. Now, here they feel like a deliberate part of the experience, which I'd say makes the entire thing a lot more interesting, fleshed out, and complete. What really enhances this is, much like the previous game, how convenient the system is. Outside of a few minor quibbles I have to mention, Rareware once again did everything they could to make tracking down the bonus rooms as painless as possible. For one, let's say you miss a bonus room and need to go back into a level to find it. Well, all you have to do when you go back in there is to find what you missed, complete it, and then you're free to exit the level with start and select without any fear of losing those things, because they're permanently counted the second you grab them, rather than only temporarily saved in memory before they're committed to your save file when you beat the stage. In other words, missing a creme coin does not necessitate a full force replay of a stage, and the moment you've got everything, you can leave and move on. I greatly appreciate that, and it's insane to me that some modern platformers still refuse to integrate this basic feature, because it would eliminate some potential unnecessary repetition. On top of this, as I said, screwing up a bonus room doesn't totally destroy the pacing, because an overwhelming majority of the time, you're kicked out very close to the entrance of the room and allowed to re-enter it almost immediately. That's not to say every bonus room is like this, since, for example, the bonuses in the roller coaster levels force you to die to try again, which can be annoying, but thankfully those are in the minority. Most of the time, bonus rooms are easy to get back into, so even if you mess them up a whole bunch, it shouldn't be too bad. I would say DKC2 is the gold standard for a full completion side quest in one of these games, and quite possibly in a 2D side-scroller in general. Oh, and best of all, there's a total of 69 bonus rooms in the entire game. What an immensely based video game. That being said, the bonus rooms are not the only part of this package deal. No. There's a few more things to keep you occupied this time around. For one, there's the video game hero coins, which are a collectible I vaguely referenced when I brought up Cranky in the Monkey Museum way earlier. These things are massive coins christened with a DK emblem, which has earned them the colloquial name of DK coins. That's what I personally know them as, and it rolls off the tongue better anyway, so I'll just call them that. Within each stage of the game, there's one of these DK coins hidden somewhere, and they essentially serve as the ultimate test of your exploration chops. Finding these is an in-universe way for Diddy to demonstrate his abilities as a video game hero to Cranky, and the more he finds, the higher of a rank he gets in this contest screen. And man, there's some really big names here, including Yoshi, Link, and of course, everyone's favorite overweight spaghetti-loving plumber Mario. Oh, and if you look to the right of the screen, there's a pretty damn funny detail. The room has a trash can to its right with a sign that says no hopers. Guess what's next to it? Sonic's shoes and Earthworm Jim's laser gun. Yeah, it's some classic 1990s console war banter, and a damn funny example at that. Sega had spent so long in a dominant position, which made them get rather cocky as a result, so now that Nintendo had a series which played a huge part in toppling that empire and taking back their throne, they decided to give Sega a taste of their own medicine, and it makes me laugh. Also, it was most likely a response to this Easter egg from Earthworm Jim Special Edition, where entering a really long cheat code with the game paused gives Jim a Donkey Kong mask with an arrow in its head. Yeah, the 1990s console wars were something else, huh? To get back on topic though, the DK coins can be absolutely anywhere, including in a chest, held by an enemy, as a reward at the end of a level, or even in one case, nested inside a bonus room. I think these were a cool addition, and I find them enjoyable to track down. For some reason they don't count towards your completion percentage, or at least I've heard they don't, but I'd still say they're more than worth going after for those so inclined. And if you're gonna go for all the bonus rooms, might as well look for these as well, you know? That being said, while I enjoy going for these things, there's two in particular that I'm not a fan of, and those are the DK coins earned from the end level High Striker. The dishonor goes to Mudhole Marsh and Webb Woods, both of which have their coins as a part of the reward rotation. In Mudhole Marsh, I don't think it's that bad because it's not terribly precise nor picky. You just have to wait for an annoyingly long amount of time, I must admit, for the cannon to your left to fire a barrel with just the right timing, and you're good. However, then you have Webb Woods. This is the longest stage in the entire game, so guess what they do with its DK coin? Put it in the one place where missing it forces you to play through the entire stage again from the beginning if you want to collect it. This coin is the only one that makes me legitimately upset, because I swear to God, it feels like you have to shoot yourself out of the barrel with frame-perfect timing to get it. I know it's not, because that would just be next-level cruel, but that's what it feels like, and again, need I remind you that missing it forces you to play the longest level in the game from the very start, if you want to get it, that is. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that one in particular, and it's enough to bring that level several pegs down in my estimation when going for 102%, but that's the only coin I can say I outright strongly dislike. Otherwise, I enjoy going for these things, like I said. On the whole, I think this game's side quests are way more enjoyable to do than those from the previous game. In my opinion, they're the ideal version of what DKC1 was attempting, but was ultimately unable to fully realize. They add a figurative extra dimension to the stages, offering an incentive to look around these otherwise straightforward and focused levels. Really, there's almost nothing more satisfying than discovering a bonus room or DK coin through your own intuition. And while you do get a pretty fun mini-challenge, in the case of bonus rooms anyway, the satisfaction alone is enough of a reward for me. Additionally, these side quests have some pretty solid speedrunning appeal, much like the levels themselves. On your first run through, it may take you a while to find all the game's bonus content, but on subsequent runs, you'll begin to remember the locations of these things more, enabling you to find everything a little faster each time. Eventually, you may even reach a point where it's all second nature, and you can plow through the game while achieving full completion in only a matter of a few hours. That right there is the measuring stick I use to judge 100% completion in games, and in my eyes, DKC2 succeeds in crafting a satisfactory experience by that metric. Like I went into, I believe believe the bonus room system is a lot less obtuse this time around, eliminating a lot of the guesswork that could sometimes crop up for DKC1's version of the quest. Alongside that, the best aspects of that game system, such as the convenience of finding things you missed, are carried over here. And while some select few bonus rooms are a bit inconvenient to retry if you mess up, those are still only a select few outliers to an otherwise painless and well-paced side quest. I'll be honest, I used to be fully on the side of any percent in this game, thinking the side quests were neat but ultimately not worth it. But now, I'm not so sure about that. These recent playthroughs I've done have allowed me to see the light, so to speak, and I may end up 100%ing this game a lot more often. Until I remember the Webwoods DK coin, I guess. But still, I think it's an absolute blast to do and can see why some people insist on saying it's the way the game was meant to be played. And guess what? What I just discussed there was only the intrinsic rewards from finding everything there is to find in this game. Yeah, alongside the satisfaction that naturally comes from tracking it down, Rareware also put in a tangible in-game reward for it, in the form of an inclusion so logical that it's crazy such a thing wasn't present in DKC1. Secret unlockable content. Starting with Crocodile Cauldron, icons for a huge Kremling known as Klubba appear on the world map. He's pretty much a recolor of Cudgel, implying the two are related in some way, and stands guard of a hidden area on Crocodile Isle. If you give him 15 Krem coins, once again earned by completing bonus rooms, or by defeating one of the game's bosses, he'll let you through his toll booth and into the Lost World. No, not that one. Which is a secret ancient power source for the island that acts as a bonus world for players going after the side quests. And they spoil it in the manual for some reason, as discussed earlier. Yeah, thanks for ruining the surprise, guys. Anyway, I think the mere idea of this world is cool as hell, what with the whole ancient primordial soup theming it has, and it even features prehistoric jungles to really sell that fact. It heavily reminds me of Agartha or Hollow Earth, and for as batshit as that quote-unquote theory is, it does make for a fascinating what-if scenario at the very least. And the Lost World plays into that really well. That includes the unique map screen theme it has, which is a song I'd imagine playing in the core of the Earth. Well, if you were able to go in there without instantly dying in a horrific way, that is. In any case, Klubba unlocks one of the 5 levels within it for you, and to say the least, these stages are by far the most difficult in the entire game. They feature loads of do-or-die platforming with tricky jumps, an abundance of deadly hazards such as spikes, and ruthless enemies placed in some of the hardest spots to avoid. That being said, these levels don't have any bonus rooms with Krem coins, and instead only contain one that houses the DK coin. Personally, I think this was a really smart decision, because once you find the DK coin for each Lost World stage, you're able to just focus on clearing the level and conquering its tough challenges rather than combing through every last square inch of it. For the most part, I enjoy this world and its increased challenge. I will admit, I've played this game so many times by this point, so the standard levels themselves provide relatively little challenge to me, at least when just running through them. By contrast, I'm much less well versed in the Lost World levels, only having played them once before the playthroughs of this game I did for the review, and so they're still able to kick my ass. I think there's some enjoyable challenges on display here, and I can just tell the designers were having a field day, thinking of absolutely crazy concepts to just play ball with. I mean, for one, this is the only part of the game to have the series staple jungles, and I love how they look. They have a prehistoric appearance, very fitting for this mostly forgotten part of the island, like I mentioned a second ago, with ancient trees and Venus flytraps in the background, weathered rock faces, and architecture made out of logs. It's one of the game's most distinct looking level types, and that's saying a lot. But anyway, stay on topic. These stages have some fairly standout ideas on their own if you ask me. For instance, Jungle Jinx, the first level in the world, has you jumping around treacherous jungles with these massive tires that you have to bounce off of. These things' sprites are just quintessential DKC for me, and I'm not even sure why. I don't know, it's gotta be the way they move relative to their size. Anyway, bouncing off these things feels great, and they pack some engaging set pieces in there, such as having to time your bounce to clear a vertical line of zingers, or needing to get into a rhythm to repeatedly bounce off a continuous line of the tires. Black Ice Battle is a level with a descending vertical structure, where you have to drop down a chasm and avoid enemies that are placed along the way. It may sound annoying, and I'll admit the camera's not perfect in the level, but I honestly have fun whenever I come back to this stage. It's a simple yet enjoyable level that plays like one of the game's usual ice stages, just a little trickier is all. Clobber Carnage involves those barrel cannons you have to manually rotate, and well, tons of clobbers, as you have to time your barrel shots to avoid ramming into zingers. These shots can have surprisingly precise timing, especially in this one area right in the end where you have to launch yourself straight up in the air. But man, it makes you feel like a god when you can learn the timing and consistently pass over the zingers unharmed. At that point, they can't touch you, and while I do find it a bit annoying that the DK coin is at the end of the stage and requires you to have both kongs to reach it, it's almost null and void, because it essentially becomes a non-concern if you can learn when to launch yourself. Hell, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I don't even mind Animal Antics, the infamous 5th and final level in the world. As its name implies, it's pretty much the culmination of the game's animal buddies, and sees you completing a series of sections where you switch between them Canon's core style. You start out as Ramby, then play as On Guard, then Squitter, then Squawks, and finally finish it off as Ratley. These sections all offer a challenge tailored to the respective animal buddies' abilities, such as how Ramby's section pits you up against hordes of kaboings and zingers, Squitter's involves using his web platforms to reach a high area, Ratley jumps across spikes using zingers as platforms, and so on. This level is infamous for a few reasons, including its length, but what most people remember it for is a particular section of gameplay that's earned quite a reputation for its brutal difficulty. Why, it's the bonus room, of course! Kidding, obviously. It's the Squawk section, which includes the wind set piece from Gusty Glade, except now you're stuck in a tight bramble corridor infested with enemies. And I have to be honest, I don't find this section nearly as unfair as its reputation would suggest. Oh, it's hard, no doubt, and you're probably gonna die a whole lot because of how easy it is to take damage if you're not careful. But is it a cavalcade of bullshit that's nearly impossible to get past? Maybe to you it is, but personally speaking, I don't think so. The section is pretty short, and in my opinion, once you get used to the timing of the wind, which I don't find insanely hard to do anyway, it just becomes a matter of not taking damage. I'm not trying to say everyone who complains about this section is some scrub who has to get good, nor is this section some flawless bit of design that can't be criticized. If you don't like it, then there's nothing wrong with that, and I can totally understand. However, in my own subjective experience, I don't find this section all that offensive, and as a result, I'm able to appreciate Animal Antics as a cool final challenge that puts your skill with the Animal Buddies movesets to one last test. All that said, however, there is one level in the Lost World I don't enjoy very much, and it's the only stage in the entire game I can say I don't like. Fiery Furnace, accessed from the Clubus Kiosk in Gloomy Gulch, is the 4th level in the Lost World, and on its own, I think the idea is pretty cool. It has a unique type of barrel cannon, which you're able to steer through the air for a short time before it goes off and launches the kongs in the direction it's pointing. This direction is fixed, so you have to quickly position the barrel in the proper spot so you're shot into another one instead of into the molten lava below. It's a really cool concept, but what kills it for me is the enemy placement and unforgiving pacing, which make the whole thing feel hectic and chaotic, and not in a good way. You have to maneuver between a bunch of fast-moving zingers, which I find obnoxious because of their deceptively wide hitboxes. In any other case, that wouldn't be a problem, but since you're forced to act quickly in this level, it can really get in the way. Between these barrel sections is also some of the most annoying combat in the game, in my opinion, with enemies placed on obnoxiously small platforms, or in such a way that attempting to eliminate them with a team-up move, the most convenient way, has a high chance of your other Kong taking damage instead of actually killing the enemy. Its bonus room is also the most frustrating one to get in the entire game. You have to bring both your Kongs to this one spot, which, as established, is a pain in the ass to the enemies in the level, because they couldn't just lower the steerable barrel even a little bit, and then go through one of the game's toughest rooms with zingers you have to precisely maneuver around in only 40 seconds. God help you if you fuck it up, because this is easily the most inconvenient bonus room to get back into. Whether you win or lose, you're forced into a non-rotating barrel cannon placed directly above the level's end goal, and it even rotates clockwise away from the direction that's before the end goal, so you're forced to hit it. So yes, this is another Webwoods DK coin situation, where you have to repeat the entire level from the beginning to get another try at the coin. However, at least Webwoods was well designed. This was just pure evil on their part, putting this in the game's most obnoxious level. I don't know what happened here, to be honest, and it sucks that such an irritating test of patience had to be part of an otherwise sweet reward for completing the game's side quests. Oh well, it's only one level, and the silver lining is, it's entirely optional, so it can only offend me so much. Something else I'm not too keen on is how, for whichever stage of the 5 you choose to save for last, you're required to defeat the final boss to access it, since you're given the last Krem coin for beating it. Issue is, beating the final boss means watching credits in the game bringing you to the title screen afterwards, thus resetting your life count. Because like many of these old cartridge games, DKC2 doesn't save the lives you get if you shut the game off. As a result, you may find yourself in the first level grinding to bring your life count back up to the maximum to prepare for the last level, which in most cases will probably be Animal Antics. Yeah, I think I've said enough. I'm glad there's a spot to get extra lives quickly for this situation in particular, and if you haven't done Swanky's bonus bonanza already, I guess you could just use that after getting the sufficient banana coins, but still, I wish they could have saved your life count. If Sonic 3 and Knuckles can do this in 1994 and on the Genesis no less, a system where, as far as I can tell anyway, most of the games had limited continues and no save feature at all, then I don't see how these games couldn't. I don't know, maybe there really was some fundamental hardware flaw in the save batteries developers had access to back then, so this would have been impossible, but still, not my favorite thing. After you finish the last bonus level, you then unlock... Actually, hold that thought. I mentioned the final boss there, and I haven't even talked about that yet, so... let's not jump the gun, huh? I think my thoughts in this game are pretty well established by now. I'm not sure how many times I've said that because I've lost track, but still, if there's any ambiguity about my feelings toward this game at this point, then it's safe to say I have failed. I think this game is a platforming masterpiece, easily one of my favorite games of all time, and it's a game I have nothing but respect for as a piece of entertainment and art. What only strengthens it, then, is the lasting impression it goes out with. To put it simply, this game has an incredible finale that wraps it up on a high note. I wouldn't say it's the most exciting, action-packed, epic video game ending of all time from a pure content perspective, but I love it for how thematically strong it is and how well it caps off the story and presentation of the game. It all starts when you reach Crazy Kremland, which is where I'd say the tension starts to gradually increase. That world's dangerous, worn-down theme park setting makes it feel like you're starting to get deeper and deeper into Kremling territory, as if you've officially broken through their exterior defenses and are starting to reach the heart of their operations. Gloomy Gulch is even more notable in this regard, and it's where the game starts to get darker and grungier. Several parts of the world are flat-out haunted, and there's some of the most dangerous Kremlings on guard throughout the whole thing, which tells you that this place is the real outskirts. You're really getting closer now, K. Rool is just ahead of you along with DK, and the time to confront him is rapidly approaching. Then, you reach K. Rool's keep. This is it. This world is the final frontier, so to speak, and it's the castle where K. Rool himself is situated. You're really deep into enemy territory now, and while this is still a lighthearted game about a clan of apes fighting lizards and whatnot, you can cut the tension with a knife. K. Rool's keep is dark, intimidating, and full of some of the game's most treacherous level themes and music. Throughout your time ascending the island, you can slowly feel the stress and rush to save DK building. It's here where it finally reaches a fever pitch. Being the last of the 6 worlds from the game's main campaign, it has some of the toughest levels to get through by far. From moment 1, the challenge continuously builds, and in this world, it reaches its peak, appropriate considering where we are in Crocodile Isle itself. There's stages like Castle Crush, Chainlink Chamber, Arctic Abyss, Windy Well, and so on, levels which really push your skills to their limit and sell the fact that this is the most heavily guarded section of the island. K. Rool knows you're here, and so he sent his most highly trained forces in a last-ditch effort to put a stop to your advances. And you see, much like some of the other things I gave a bit of critique to in my DKC1 review that I think were greatly improved in DKC2, this is the exact thing I was getting at when discussing the finale in the previous game. It's not like I want some grand action climax to every single game in existence, but I like thematic consistency. I like it when games make an effort to leave a great lasting impression, and when there's thought put into this kind of thing, because it can make the game stick out in your mind forevermore. That's the reason I harped on DKC1 for somewhat weak theming and an underwhelming climax, because those things are super strong in the sequel in my opinion. Here in DKC2, K. Rool's Keep feels like an actual climax. It's more than just a world in a video game we're going through for gameplay's sake. It's the culmination of a huge journey through hell and high water to rescue the series' title character from the clutches of a gigantic crocodile monster. I'm not saying it's some high art, but it's like I said in the last video, a little can go a long way in creating a memorable experience, and I think DKC2 puts in a well above average amount of effort into making such an impact. At any rate, once you make it past Toxic Tower, one of the game's hardest levels, you finally reach K. Rool's stronghold itself, the aptly named Stronghold Showdown. Let's get in there and show this Mark Zuckerberg, oh sorry, I mean lizard bastard what for. Oh shit, it's DK. Looks like K. Rool's going easy on us after all. Oh, you son of a bitch. Yeah. Did you really think it would be that easy? K. Rool set us up intentionally, and didn't think we would actually be able to make it, so he's now fled like a coward into his last line of defense, the Flying Croc. That same airship he captured DK with in the first place. Yeah, remember that? It's only been like an hour or something. Except probably more because I have no idea how long this video will actually be as I write this. Anyway, I think the design of this thing is really cool. But before we're able to board it and confront K. Rool, there's one more obstacle in our way. The ladder leading up to the airship has gotten ensnared in some brambles, and so there's one last stage for us to get through. Welcome to Screech's Sprint, which is definitely one of the main game's most challenging levels. It starts off with extremely demanding platforming that asks you to use your somersault move skillfully and just generally act fast. This includes some of those aforementioned instances where the somersault move is actually required to progress. So in a lot of ways, this level feels like the ultimate test of your moveset. Once you reach the checkpoint, you then become Squawks, and will notice a dark parrot named Screech waiting your arrival. A traffic light appears, and of course, you know what that means. This section of the level is a race against Screech, and it's actually quite tense, even if you already know where the shortcuts are. You'll be dodging those red unkillable zingers, taking out yellow ones, and generally maneuvering around the tight brambles as quick as possible. I think it's really fun, and a worthy last level before the end of the game. In addition, if this level, as well as Screech himself, weren't cool enough already, then the evil parrot features his own unique musical track, Bad Bird Rag. And honestly, it's a shame I don't hear it get talked about very often, because I think it's a fantastic song that goes along with this race really well. It's fittingly tense and makes you feel the rush of the moment, much like Run Rambi Run, except now, instead of running for your life, you're charging headfirst into danger to beat Screech in a race where the loser will surely die. Maybe. It is a kid's game after all. Regardless of that, great track. In any case, when you reach the finish line, it's time to confront the captain himself at last, rescue DK, and teach him a lesson for messing with the Kongs yet again. Wow, okay, alright then. To be honest, this final boss against Captain K. Rool is a pretty cool showdown if I do say so myself. Much like the K. Rool fight last time, it's probably my favorite boss in the game, all because it's fittingly the most challenging and climactic of them all. In this game, however, there's even more unique phases, as opposed to DKC1, which basically repeated some of the same attacks while adding one extra cycle each time. Here, the core of the fight is K. Rool's blunderbuss, which he uses to do things like shoot cannonballs at you, float across the screen, and fire these colored magical blasts that apply a status effect, such as slow motion or reverse controls, or even suck you in so he can take one of your Kongs out by whacking them with the gun's stock. After each phase, there's one cannonball you're able to pick up, which you have to throw into K. Rool's gun as he tries to pull you in. This will cause it to jam and blow up in the crocodile captain's face. And in a similar vein to the crown he threw at you last time, the cannonball you jammed his gun with comes flying out and you'll have to jump over it. All in all, I find this fight way more exciting than the final boss of the first game, because it's faster paced and has more in-depth attack patterns, which contribute to a more satisfying experience in my opinion. If I had to make any suggestions, I guess they could have shortened it a bit, because it does go on for 9 whole phases, but at the very least, they give you a DK barrel every 3 hits. Outside of that, I find very little to complain about with this boss. It's challenging and caps off the game's difficulty curve pretty well. It feels like a proper intense climax where the Kongs are in a desperate struggle to take K. Rool out and rescue Donkey, and it even has a pulse-pounding musical track, Crocodile Cacophony, that complements the action extremely well. When you enter the Flying Croc, it starts out all tense, foreshadowing the fierce battle that's about to take place. Then when the song truly kicks in, you're treated to a, well, cacophony of epic proportions, as the showdown truly escalates and K. Rool breaks out all the stops in an attempt to take these monkeys down. At one point, there's even a neat leitmotif for the map screen theme, Welcome to Crocodile Isle, snuck in there, which really sells that this is the climax, the Alamo, so to speak, of this grand adventure, and it demonstrates just how far we've come from humble beginnings. Don't really know what else to say. This song bangs and is one of my favorite boss themes from this series. In general, this showdown is friggin' sweet, and the ending that plays after you land the last blow is beyond satisfying. Following K. Rool's last attempt to take the Kongs out, which involves teleporting around the room and trying to suck them in, his gun is jammed one last time, and after a final jump over the ensuing cannonball, K. Rool stumbles once again. As he's trying to get up, our playable Kongs freak the hell out, but just before the captain can get off the ground, DK breaks free and... Yeah, now that is fucking satisfying. After such a long journey with so many trials and tribulations, I couldn't imagine a better ending than what just happened. Especially with that id-tickling crackling sound and how K. Rool falls all the way down to the island and gets gnawed by sharks. Completely embarrassed by this clan of monkeys yet again. Diddy and Dixie then go to meet with Cranky, who tells you that you're either in good shape or have to step up your game depending on how many DK coins you got throughout your playthrough. Judgmental bastard. And then the credits roll with a theme that sounds like a fitting end to a grand odyssey. But that isn't the true ending of the game. No, there's still one more thing left on our plate. Before you entered Stronghold's Showdown and got caught up in the last brawl with K. Rool, you may have noticed that there's one last Lost World stage left over. I mentioned that before, yada yada, I'm not a huge fan of how your lives reset after the credits and all that. Well, upon clearing the last stage, there's one more thing you unlock, which I left ambiguous when discussing my thoughts in the Lost World. Well, that was for good reason. Because the thing you unlock for beating all 5 stages in the world is... Motherfucker. You gain access to the island's inner power source, Crocodile Core, where K. Rool has re-emerged to hide and prepare a backup plan. When you first enter, you can see the effects of the shark attack on him, as he's covered in seaweed and has to dislodge fish from his gun. Once again, pretty funny little attention to detail. Now that they've found him, the Kongs have no other choice but to finally finish K. Rool off for good so he's not able to pull another stunt like this again. Well, until there's another potential game that happens. Yeah, in other words, this game has a secret final boss, which is pretty cool in my opinion. I've basically already gone over this in detail, but I love how this game rewards you for getting everything. It makes it even more worthwhile in my eyes. Anyway, the secret final boss in Crocodile Core. This fight is noticeably shorter than the standard Captain K. Rool boss, only having 1 phase, but it has around 11 total attacks or something like that, so it somewhat balances out. K. Rool keeps on firing his blunderbuss at you, shooting a metric fuck ton of cannonballs and magic blasts that you have to jump over. Some of these jumps are actually quite devious, even with Dixie's helicopter hair, and require some pretty tight and long jumps. It's a rather enjoyable fight if you ask me, if a bit short, and features one of my favorite backgrounds in the entire game. Those ancient Kremling statues are surprisingly detailed, and the big, intimidating, pulsating power core of the island that's the one thing from keeping it from collapsing in on itself is really mesmerizing, especially with how it deforms and continuously travels upward to the island's surface. It's so unique from anything else in the game, and like I've said numerous times by this point, that says a lot considering this game's unique art direction. At the end of the boss, another cannonball appears, and upon tossing it into K. Rool's gun, it blows up in his face yet again, sending him flying into the island's power core. Upon hitting it, the whole place starts violently shaking as immense tremors travel up and down the whole island. Yeah, Diddy? Pretty sure that's our cue to get the hell out of here. The Kongs hurry over to Cranky, who's impressed by all that Diddy was able to do. In one last trip to the video game hero competition screen, he notices that the young monkey managed to locate all 40 DK coins, and evidently overtake Mario as the most formidable gaming hero in history. Well, at least according to Cranky's metric. The elderly Kong says he's not afraid to admit when he's wrong, and that this is one of those cases. He's impressed by the work Diddy, and by extension you were able to pull off, and congratulates you for a job well done, saying that Diddy must take after him and DK. Honestly, it feels good to get the old man's approval, and you can really feel he's genuinely proud of Diddy for what he was able to accomplish. After such a long and challenging journey, it's quite nice, I must say. Finally, the Kongs bounce out of there, and you're then treated to a phenomenal ending sequence. DK, Diddy, and Dixie are all safe on DK Island once again, and witness Crocodile Isle's energy reactor overloading, which causes a spectacular explosion that completely blows the top off the island. It starts to sink into the ocean, but in the nick of time, K. Rool manages to escape on a raft, as he laughs and sails off into the distance, presumably vowing revenge on the Kong family for the destruction of his homeland. Once the dust settles, you can hear the serene ambience as the Kongs just sit there on the cliffside, observing and internalizing what they just saw, while taking in the calm breeze and gorgeous sunset that remain in the wake of the island's destruction. I absolutely love this ending. It's beautiful and makes me feel amazing after this grand adventure, all the while indicating that even though K. Rool is still out there, scheming and preparing his next plan, we can rest a while, as peace has been restored once again. The only thing that would make this all cooler is if there was this huge super secret unlockable for beating the secret K. Rool fight, such as playable DK or something, but I'm splitting hairs at that point. But see, again, this is the sort of thing I was talking about in my DKC1 review. A game doesn't have to have an insane over-the-top ending. All you need to do is make something memorable that caps off the experience well, and you're golden. DKC2 does this exceptionally well in my opinion, and the way it frames its finale as the climactic final battle following Diddy's personal journey to save DK and prove himself as a worthy video game hero in his own right is nothing short of spectacular, or at least I'd say so. At the end of the day, that's the kind of thing that makes me love this medium so much. A game is able to connect personally with its players, much more than a movie, book, play, or other such things, all because of its unique interactive element. They're able to take us on journeys we can't really find elsewhere, and so the times a game uses the qualities exclusive to the medium to create a memorable experience like DKC2 does, well, that sort of thing is the recipe for an absolute favorite game for me. What more can I really say? This game is truly something special, and I love it more than words can describe. And that's about it. I think Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest, man, I'm only now realizing what a mouthful that title is a platforming masterpiece. Definitely one of the best side-scrollers I've ever had the pleasure of playing. In my last video, I concluded that DKC1 was fantastic, but still had some untapped potential within it. Well, this is the game to unleash it, and establish this series as one of my favorites of all time. Without a doubt, this game at least has to be in the conversation for one of the greatest games of its generation. Sitting right up there alongside the likes of Mario World, Sonic 2 and 3 and Knuckles, Mega Man X, and everything else you could possibly think of from back then, the way I see it anyways. In fact, you want to know something? I've gone on record saying Super Mario World was my favorite side-scroller, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles wasn't too far behind, but after revisiting this game for this review and truly remembering how spectacular it is, this game may just take the cake in that regard. It's got gorgeous visuals, the best I've ever personally seen on the SNES, an amazing soundtrack with immense emotional appeal, provides an engaging challenge with both laser-focused design and consistent variety, providing some of the best level design in any platform in my opinion, an intoxicating pace, a full completion side quest rich with great content and neat rewards, an incredible thematic through line in story and progression, and a whole bunch of little touches and charms that inject loads of personality and life into the game that make it feel like the product of a team of passionate people who wanted to make the best game they possibly could. DKC2 was a true labor of love from all the people involved with it, and if you ask me, it's plainly evident that every aspect of this game had an extraordinary amount of thought, care, and above all else, soul poured into it. I don't mean to sound cheesy or dramatic or anything in that vein, but to me this game is the pure essence of a passion project fronted by people with real ambitions in what they wanted to create. Of course, passion and ambition themselves can only get you so far, but in this case, it was backed up by immense talent that was able to take said love and manifest it into something truly awesome. As I've been talking about for the past 2 hours, more or less, this game is easily one of the most prominent cases of a developer having their heart in the exact right place. But rather than not really having the expertise or skill to translate that into a final product that matches what they wanted to achieve, Rare's developers, composers, writers, and all other people involved with the creation of this game were more than able to execute their vision from their sheer raw expertise for making fantastic stuff. And for my money, they managed to create one of the best platforming games of all time. Not just from the 1990s, not just from the SNES, and not just from this series only, but one of the greatest platformers in the history of games. Which is what makes it such a gigantic shame that I don't see this game get talked about quite as much as those of other franchises, or even as often as DKC1. I'd say it's at the very least of a comparable quality to, if not exceeding, pretty much all of the games from its era, even including many of the most popular and oft-cited examples. As I've been saying, don't take that the wrong way. I love many of those games as well, but when stacked against DKC2, I can easily see why someone would cite the Conquest as the era's best. Now you see, that rhyme was actually intentional. How about that? Anyway, even if you aren't convinced, I at least hope I've been able to explain why I love DKC2 so much in a way that my thought process makes sense and you can understand why I came to the conclusions that I did. Put simply, it's just one of those titles. I've played this game countless times and it never gets old. For me, it's the absolute essence of a perfect sequel, as I went into, and all of its elements gel together so well and enhance each other, so much so that it's excruciatingly hard to talk about one element without wanting to go off on 15 different tangents at once about its other aspects. This is one of those rare games where I have absolutely no hang-ups about recommending it to anyone. And unlike many of my other favorite games, there's no asterisks or anything like that which may prevent me from fully saying it will be a must-play for absolutely everyone. Like something not aging the best or what have you. I think any person can enjoy a romp of this game and come out fully satisfied with it. If you ask me, it was where Donkey Kong Country transitioned from being an awesome game to an awesome series. Disregarding specific pockets or moments of gameplay that could have been fixed up a bit, which I don't really consider proper critiques anyway. The only overarching thing I can really say I dislike about DKC2 is the fact that you have to pay Wrinkly to save, but even that's pretty much a non-issue, because the currency is so abundant that it almost doesn't matter. Quite frankly, I'm impressed with how much Rareware cooked with this game, and so early on in the series' lifespan too, to the point that if it ended here, I would be incredibly satisfied. I love Donkey Kong Country 2, and it's easily one of my favorite games. However, the series would not end there. Even though the N64 was on its way by this point, Rareware still decided to make Donkey Kong Country a trilogy, and released one last game in the series on its console of origin in 1996. That game is rather interesting in my opinion, and for numerous reasons. Its circumstances, the things it does on its own, but honestly, the most intriguing thing is without a doubt its reception within the larger DKC community, and also in general. Put simply, the game has a rather polarized and even mixed legacy that follows it around, and from my own observations, it doesn't seem like most people can agree on it. Personally, those kinds of games are arguably the most interesting to think or talk about, and they tend to produce some of the most interesting and engaging discussion because of how much there is to discuss. Naturally, with the game being the conclusion to this era of the series, I'll be entering that particular ring next time, so to speak. So join me then if you'd like to hear what I have to say about Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, and find out how well I think it capped off this phenomenal trilogy. I'll try and get it out a little faster than these previous two videos, but as always, no promises there. Hey, I said I would try. In any case, thank you so much for watching this monster of a video all the way through, and I will see you next time. Peace.